shared his thoughts on the matter.
The fans love it when you're always loyal to the team, loyal to the club. It's very tentative for Isaac, you know. He's in great position. It's very tentative for the club, how much money they offer to him. But I think Eddie will be the guy. I mean, the manager won't let him to happen this situation.
Elsewhere, Brentford could be chasing Ipswich Omari Hutchinson as a potential Brian Mbeumo replacement. We also understand Ethan Nwaneri set to sign a fresh 4-year contract with Arsenal. For all the latest transfer news, head to our live blog at talksport.com. Bournemouth are preparing to make the Premier League's smallest stadium to the Premier League's second smallest stadium. The club wants to almost double the capacity of the Vitality to 20,200. They're hoping to complete the works by August 2027. Now, after Scotty Scheffler said this ahead of the Open this week.
I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point.
Golfing legend Dame Laura Davies is baffled by the comments from the world #1 and told talkSPORT he must be bored of winning.
That's what you go for, you know, those moments. And yeah, they're fleeting, but most players on tour don't get the luxury of winning that many times in a short span of time that Scotty's won. And if I was his fellow pros, I'd be thinking, well, you are making it look easy, but it's not as easy and it shouldn't be boring.
Well, despite Scheffler's comments, he has expressed his determination to win the major. Scheffler, Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm are considered the 3 favourites to win the Claret Jug. The Open at Portrush gets underway tomorrow and talkSPORT 2 will keep you covered.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Different voice for you. You're listening now to Danny Kelly and Simon Jordan here on talkSPORT. So Newcastle United bracing themselves for an official offer, apparently, from Liverpool for Alexander Isak that could be in the region of £130 million. This is the ultimate power move from Liverpool. Meanwhile, a Spanish disability rights group is planning legal action, calling Lamine Yamal's 18th birthday party entertainment discriminatory. Where's the line between entertainment and exploitation? Also today, Scotty Scheffler peers into the existential void as he asked himself, what's the point of it all? Were you one of the Palace fans? What were you trying to achieve with that march on Selhurst Park last night? And we continue our build-up to Usyk versus Dubois 2 with boxer-turned-trainer Paul Smith. All that plus a whole lot of other stuff as well here, right through till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is Danny Kelly and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT. Now, regular listeners on my assorted and many platforms will know that normally I cannot be dragged back from bucolic splendour in Southern Ireland, except by wild horses or the dangled bait or getting to work with my old mate Simon Jordan again. Now, Simon and I worked for years and years and years here on talkSPORT, where you could argue that I was training him up to be the top broadcaster. I noticed he has won a whole lot of awards since we stopped working together. How are you, Simon?
I'm good, mate. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
nice to see you.
Yeah, it is. And we have the perfect male friendship. We're really close, but we're never in touch.
That's right. Absolutely.
And that is exactly what we need. I'm looking forward to hearing your unrehearsed first views on a whole range of issues today.
Careful what you wish for, mate.
As well as teasing you about certain sports that you're not interested in as well.
Indeed.
I'm glad to see we've also kept up another tradition of the sort of Kelly-Jordan axis. He is dressed up very beautifully. He could meet an ambassador now, and an ambassador would feel underdressed. I, of course, look like a hedge has dressed me this morning. So looking forward to the whole day. Lot to get through, Simon.
Yep.
And let's start with football, of course. And, well, already having got Florian Wirtz in,
Indeed.
Liverpool now making eyes at Alexander Isak. The plan seems to be, you'd love this, this is a power, the old power play. They say they want to take Alexander Isak, who I think we all rate really, really
Very
highly,
highly,
off of Newcastle's hands. And if they don't get him, they will take the other person, Ugo Ekitike, who Newcastle are after as well. Question first for you, why do Newcastle need Ekitike if they got Isak? Are they already kind of planning for the departure of one for the other?
Well, they've lost Callum Wilson, haven't they?
They have.
So whether they can convince a boy that, I mean, the money that they're asking for this kid, I mean, he didn't hit the ground at PSG, did he?
No.
He's gone to Frankfurt, he's played 30, 40 games, and all of a sudden he's a £90 million footballer. The world's gone mad.
That's the way of the world.
The world's gone mad.
Yeah.
But I would assume that Newcastle now are in a situation where economically they're able to meet the challenges of PSR, which they weren't previously. I did an interview with Eddie Howe last year on the Upfront podcast, and he was very unhappy about the idea of selling younger players in order to supplement the PSR.
Well, Anderson was a disaster when they lost him,
and so he was speaking about that, and obviously now Newcastle have kicked on. They've won the League Cup, which is a cup, not quite the cup that my team won, but a cup, and of course the nation celebrated that.
We'll get on later. Simon, to cups that our teams have won.
And
recently.
so they've got a Champions League berth now, haven't they? Or they've got a league, but they've certainly got a Europa berth, a European berth. So they've got two fronts to compete on. They've seen the success of Villa. In the first time Newcastle won the Champions League, the format was the old format. They've seen that Villa and other teams have really profited from this new format of the Champions League. So buying a player like this, if indeed that's what they intend to do to supplement alongside Isak, then they are really putting their best foot forward now and starting to say, OK, we've had 3 years under the Saudi ownership. We've got Eddie Howe in position, and Eddie Howe's gone from strength to strength, and my opinions of him have dramatically changed. The team is a great team to watch. And if they're going to have a tilt at trying to overturn the orthodoxy, now is as good a time as any.
When you say Eddie Howe has changed your opinion of him, just because I can't listen to everything you say.
I in other shows post the time that we had together, talked about Eddie Howe. I wasn't enamoured with him. I thought he was a bit flaky about not taking the Celtic job, and I felt that his level was at Bournemouth, and I was wrong.
Yeah,
my opinions of him have dramatically changed because the production of a team has been so significant, and the team that performed in his second season after he sailed away from the relegation battle that they were in was a sight to behold. And I remember the game, they took it to Man City and drew 3-3, and that was, for me, that was a turning point. Then meeting him in person, because he wanted to do the upfront stuff with me, so we had a very, very frank exchange of views, and I just like him.
Gatekeeper.
I still maintain it's going to be very difficult for him to go to the Holy Grail and to achieve. I mean, let's be honest, the Saudi didn't buy Newcastle so they can win the League Cup.
No.
They bought the Newcastle so they can get the influence and the opportunity to dominate football, and as they are trying to do in boxing and other sports, right?
Sure.
So it's still...
And as we saw with the Club World Cup, which was all about Saudi power.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, hang on, producer saying, and Chelsea winning it. Yeah, I get that.
So we sit there, and we say that I say now that this guy's a top manager.
Yeah.
And perhaps an England manager in the waiting, if indeed he wants to go down that rather poison chalice. But the fact of the matter is, I think he's a very good manager. But I still think that in order to be able to get the Premier League, there might be a gap between what Eddie Howe builds as a platform and someone else coming and taking the spoils of all the opportunities that he's created.
I mean, it's very difficult these days, Simon, to keep a grip on the finances. I know you do your podcast and all the rest of it, because I personally think that the governance of the game is breaking down.
It's absurd.
We saw Aston Villa following Chelsea selling their women's team.
We used to speak about the idea, you and I, didn't we, about the fact that there needed to be some degree of control, better redistribution, better governance, maybe a commissioner to some extent.
Yeah.
But not this crap that we're seeing.
No.
Not this, all of a sudden, the world's being governed by spreadsheets and the world's being governed by rules that are now patching up things and creating bigger problems than the rules were ever designed to avoid.
we've got to the stage now where if you're a club with a player a valuable player, but you want to move him on, he's apparently worthless. And as you said earlier on,
got an academy player, he's all profit.
And he's all profit. Yeah. And then if you've got somebody who's had one decent season in the Premier League,
he's elevated.
80 million quid.
Absolutely.
And so we get a situation here where Liverpool have got to get rid of. They've got to find a way to get Darwin Núñez away from the club. Yeah. That's going to be very, very difficult, given what they paid for him and what they pay him.
True, but the commerciality of Darwin Núñez is if they paid 80 million quid for him, they've had him for 2 or 3 years, he's on their balance sheet at 20 million quid. So they can bung him out for 50 million quid and still make a profit, and the cash will be the differential.
Are you paying 50 million quid for Darwin Núñez?
No, but someone might, because there is enough people out there, that believe frogs can be kissed and turn into princes. Look, I mean, I look at the Isak situation, and I think this is all agent. This is all agent manipulation, because you hear in the background noise that he wants to rock in with 3 years left to go on his contract and suggest to the world that he needs a pay rise.
Yeah.
Now, if you're then able to put the fear of God into Newcastle, insofar as they'll be fearful of anything, which is by saying these guys over here, Legacy Football Club, Premier League champions, they're going to come sniffing with a £130 million bid, which won't get them out of Newcastle, by the way. They're going to have to go bigger and bolder than that. Then you've got a case to say to Newcastle, pony up. You want him to stay, then you get him to pay. And I look at that and say, it's like these release clauses. These release clauses that have been put in place are hostages to fortune. They really are an opportunity for agents to be able to hold information, go to football clubs like yours.
We'll get on to it. I don't understand Mr. Marinakis' fury at Tottenham, because clearly the only people who knew about the secret clause are Nottingham Forest employees and the agent and Morgan Gibbs White. That's it.
Well, it depends. If you've got a smoking gun from Tottenham's side that asks the agent, what can you tell me about this situation? And by the way, do the player want to come here, and what's his sort of financial demands? If those conversations have happened, that's inducement.
Yeah, and so that's every transfer ever done, is it?
Well, you and I both know that, but the fact of the matter is the release clauses are the big problem now, because the release clause, everybody, if you want to knock on someone's door about a player, it's one thing, but if you want to find a way to commercially compromise, because a release clause is only designed to trigger an outcome, in terms of it's a guarantee to a player that if someone gets 50 million quid offer for a player that's on a £50 million release clause, it has to be entertained. Now, of course, a selling club isn't going to want that to be broadcast knowledge. He's going to go, right, okay, I've potentially got an offer. If you come in with 60 million quid, even though the release is 50, and not discuss the release clause to anybody, we'll let you go with it. So it is a challenging landscape, these release clauses, because on one hand, it gives you a thought process that you can get players out when you want to. On another hand, what it does is it gets agents phoning up clubs going, would you like to know the release clause? If you'd like to know the release clause, I tell you what, you give me £5 million on top, I'll split it with the player and we can have a deal here.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that goes on. I'm not saying that's what's happened in the Marinakis and Nottingham Forest situation, but I'm saying in the broader terms.
And nor, unless these people are unbelievably stupid, will there be any paper trail at all, so that it's impossible to prove. And also, if you're an agent, you just go and say, if you were to bid somewhere between 59 and 61 million, I reckon you've got every chance there.
Yeah. If you're Marinakis and you're Nottingham Forest and you're going to bark at the moon and you call for a formal investigation, right, then the Premier League are going to start going after phones, and they'll go after every aspect of communication. Not Daniel Levy's phone, because Daniel Levy won't be doing this sort of stuff.
Have you spoken to him, Dan, yet?
I haven't. I've avoided giving him a call. I was tempted to do it yesterday, but I thought I'd leave it alone.
Because Marinakis versus Daniel Levy is pure popcorn, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Two ends of two bookends.
I can see you rubbing your hands together.
Yeah, two bookends, popcorn moments there.
Yeah. But look, I guess you're right. Isak, this is the way contracts work. I believe in the sanctity of contracts, because workers and all the rest of it. But Alexander Isak could probably very righteously argue, I'm worth more than 120 grand a week now.
He can, Dan, but the morality of an argument based upon a contract that you've signed. Nobody held you down and put your feet and put thumb screws onto you and suggested that you should sign for this paltry sum of £120,000 a week. You got what you and your agent asked for. Now, coming out 3 years to go, not 18 months, but 3 years to go, and potentially saying I can exploit the circumstances, is the reality of the world, but it's also a little bit whiffy. I don't like it. You sign a contract, you've got 3 years to go.
No, I agree. Yeah. And then we're seeing, as you say, with release clause, contracts are now coming under pressure as well from players and agent. Yeah. The very basis on which people are employed, let's be honest, but the players are very, very powerful and all the rest of it, but they still have to have some way of knowing, because otherwise clubs can't be run, can they?
Release clauses are also caveated. They're based upon payment terms. They're based upon who's buying. So there's a whole raft of things. And people think that, you met the release clause, ultimately that means the deal's done. No, it doesn't, because it can also be based upon how the payment terms detail. whether there's sell-on clauses into this, whether there's legacies to other previous football clubs, and also who the club is. Because if it's a legacy club, there'll be a premium on top of the sell-on.
Last question, because our next guest is already lined up. Did you ever put release clauses into any contracts that you did? They weren't fashionable back then. Managers.
Yeah, managers predominantly. Yeah.
They had to come and do your garden, didn't they?
They did, yes.
If they fell out with you, yeah. Listen, we've got a great guest for you coming up next. We're just a few days away now from the first test in the British and Irish Lions tour of Australia. It should be fantastic. And the former Australian coach, these days head coach of Japan, Eddie Jones, joins us next here. I've got to call it Kelly and Jordan. We're back to that again. Probably these days, to be honest, to sell it, Jordan and Kelly, here on talkSPORT. Amazingly, you're listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. Okay, I am absolutely coiled springs, coiled panthers, whatever the phrase is.
Are you?
For the first test
for the
on
Lions.
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
The British and Irish Lions take on Australia for the first time. It's, of course, as always, the hype and the build-up in this country has been pretty extraordinary. I wonder if it's been shared in Australia, where rugby union is a big sport, but of course competes in a.
We've had David Campese coming on a few times, winding everybody up and getting everybody at it.
David's going to be part of the talkSPORT commentary team, which will be great. Look, somebody who has experience of rugby in these islands and, of course, in the great country of Australia is Eddie Jones, former coach of both, England and Australia, and these days the head coach of Japan. And I think you've worked with Eddie before.
I did. He's a riddle wrapped up in a rhyme. Told me. I asked him on the day that I was doing this interview. So are you going to say the Australian coach? Yeah, of course I am, mate. Not going to leave. Does the interview with me. Goes out the next day. Day after that, he resigns. Yeah, so he's a rascal.
No one tells you the truth, Simon.
Yeah, true.
And it's a great honour. We're joined now by Eddie Jones. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, boys. All right.
Very, very good indeed. Well done for pulling the wool over Simon's eyes. Incidentally, the easiest trick in the world to pull off, Eddie. Eddie, look, a bit of background first.
He's a tricky customer.
He is a tricky customer. Yeah.
You're not so bad yourself, mate.
Eddie, Australia is an amazing country for sport, and rugby union isn't always the number one priority with people. Will they be looking forward, though, as a country, to this Lions test coming up on Saturday, or is there always other priorities for Australian people?
Australians are into big sporting events, and that's how rugby's done well in Australia through World Cups and Lions tours and the Bledisloe Cup against New Zealand. It's not the day-to-day popular, but big events like the Lions tour, people love them, and the fans, the crowd so far have been pretty good, and I'm sure on Saturday, Suncorp's going to be absolutely chock-a-block, and it should be a great atmosphere.
Eddie, the Lions have expressed a great deal of how can I put it, optimism about this tour. Certainly, on paper at least, it looks easier than if they were playing South Africa, who of course are monstrous these days, or traditionally New Zealand, very hard place to go. What chance do you give Australia? Where is Australian Rugby Union at the moment?
Well, I think, if you look at the world rankings, Australia's 8th or 9th in the world, and that's probably indicative of their performances over the last, 6 or 7 years. But the big thing is in a 3-test series in Australia, Australia's got the ability to win at least 1.5 of the 3 halves, and that'll give them a chance of winning. And, they've got good players. They're well coached by Joe Smith, and you lay it up with the overall optimism and super positivity around the Lions. It's all set up for an upset, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Obviously, in the country where I live in Ireland, the belief is that they'll just put 15 Irish players out there and that will be enough. I'm not sure it will be enough. Talk to me about the challenge that of coaching the Lions. How difficult is it in less than 8 weeks to put together a team? You've got fantastic talents. That's a given. How difficult is it to turn them into a team?
A lot of players around the same ability. That's the most difficult thing, is to mould that talented group of players where they're all number one choices in their country. So, whenever you got players who are number one choices, to tell them they're not number one choices is always difficult. And trying to get the right combination within the team is the most difficult part of I imagine, coaching a Lions team.
And what do you do, Eddie? Because they've now got, having dragged in a load of players for the so-called geography selection, they're going to have more players not involved than they are involved. How, looking forward, regardless of the result in Suncorp, how do they deal with a load of players who have not made the actual starting 11? 15 in this case.
Well, I think that's one of Andy Farrell's great skills. He's got good man management skills. He was a knockabout, pretty rough sort of rugby league player who knocked around. He understands team situations well. He's got a good coaching staff underneath him. It's all about making sure those players still feel you.
Listen, we'll try and get Eddie back on a better line because, as always, when you've got a proper expert on you, and I like to shut my mouth and listen, but you can't listen if he can't get through to you. You can't. Nobody can be enthused about every sport all the time.
No, I'm enthused to a level because ultimately I always want to make sure that we smash the Australians to the next life, whether it be in cricket or whether it be in rugby or any other sport that we've got. I mean, obviously I've been listening to the background noise. We've been covering it a lot on the show. We've been listening to Joel Smith talking about the availability of players and seeming to renege on agreements between the various boards about who's going to play in the provinces games.
Which is why now that they're moaning about the Lions bringing in extra players, shut up. Yeah. Because you've already reneged on your end of the deal, yeah.
And I was also obviously looking at the arguments being put forward about the inclusion of Owen Farrell, and David Campese, as I said earlier on, was talking about nepotism and the reality of that situation. So of course I'm interested and intrigued.
But listen to the players; they love Farrell being in the squad.
I would think so. He's a leader.
I don't think you'll make the test squad this time round.
But he'll be good for the environment. I mean, I spent some time with some of the players. I spent some time with Ellis Genge, who I found to be a fascinating character from a very difficult background at times, but a real strong character. Getting him to string a sentence together without the F-bomb being in the middle of it was a difficult conundrum. But actually working out the psyche of this player and then speaking to various people about him, because I think he's going to be an integral part of the Lions' opportunity to be successful in this particular tour.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder. And I know it's a tour. I get it, and it happens. But the world is changing. You know, we're seeing Club World Cups. We're going to see a Spanish league match played outside of Spain and all the rest of it. I wonder why we don't have the British Lions against New Zealand, for instance, here in these islands. One game in Dublin, one game. It'd be, I mean, commercially, it'd go through the roof, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing is the thing that you touched upon with Eddie, which is putting together these players that are often. I mean, I sit in the studio with the Scotsman, constantly parodying the opportunity for Scotland to achieve anything, constantly listening to the fact that they got a 0-0 draw at Wembley in a football match and had a national holiday on the back of it, right? So when you've got that, and that must reverberate inside dressing rooms amongst players, and you've got to throw them together. As you just said to Eddie, in the 8-week period of rivalries that are seeded rivalries, not only clubs but international rivalries, and people talking about they didn't think they were going to like Ellis Genge, and when they actually get into the change room, they really like him.
Dan Sheehan, the Irish hooker, I said, "I despise him," was the phrase he used.
He doesn't now.
No, he doesn't now, because he's got to meet him, to play with him.
He sees the advantages of having him around him on side.
I actually watched that interview on RTE, the Irish National Broadcast. When he used the word despise, I thought, oh, blimey, you do see the size of the job here.
I mean, the conventional wisdom is suggesting that, I mean, one of the things I was going to ask Eddie if we get him back is why is Australian rugby in such decline? It is a pivotal sport. They are very proud of that sport, whether it's the connotation is league or whatever else. They're very proud of their international setup, and we've always had this rivalry with the Australians going back long before the 2003 World Cup when we did it to them on their own backyard, which was delightful. I was going to ask him about the state of Australian rugby and why it's got to this point, and he'll talk, I suspect, about youth development.
Yeah, and the competition. I mean, look at a lot of very, very tall athletic blokes play Australian rules.
Yep.
Rugby league is monstrous in that country. You've always got that competition. Yep. It's the same argument as I have when people say to me, could Ireland produce more soccer players? I mean, obviously, it produce loads of great soccer players. But first of all, you've got to get past the fact that anybody with any athletic ability, the first port of call in most places is, can you play hurling? Can you play Gaelic football?
Well, it's a conundrum, isn't it? It's like Welsh rugby. I mean, Welsh rugby is right in the crapper in terms of the quality.
They did beat Japan recently, so they stopped that run, haven't they?
Absolutely. And, and I was surprised, again, because another one of these conversations I had was with Warren Gatland, and he has obviously managed the Lions, and I was sort of challenging him about his job with the Welsh RFU, saying, how are the Welsh allowing you, because you're producing a Horlicks of a team right now, how are they allowing you to go and manage the Lions as well? Shouldn't you be focused on the Welsh team? But he was another talking about the Lions and what goes into that component, which is a fascinating mix. I mean, it's a unique tradition, isn't it, this Lions framework?
I think it is, and that's why I get so involved with it. Listen, we need to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about one of the most 21st century stories I think I've ever come across, the controversy surrounding Lamine Yamal's 18th birthday party, which has made huge waves in Spain and beyond. We'll talk about that next here on Kelly and Jordan.
Liverpool are willing to put 120 mil on the table for Alexander Isak should he decide to leave Newcastle this summer. That would be a British transfer record. It's not a formal offer though, and the Magpies say they're not even considering selling him. Our chief football correspondent Alex Crook is confident the Swede will stay put this summer.
I think Newcastle will be relaxed about the situation until they get some kind of nod from the Isak camp that he wants to leave and wants to join Liverpool.
Get all the transfer latest at talksport.com. Golf now, and as we count down the days until the Open Championship tees off, Scotty Scheffler has posed the existential question, what's the point? While the world number one expressed his interest in winning at Portrush this week, he reckons it would be awesome for 2 minutes.
This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart.
And as heavyweights Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk meet again at Wembley this weekend, Daniel's told talkSPORT he's determined to make his rival feel like an old man.
Let it flow now. Let the whole circus continue and let it flow until I have to get in the ring and put chaos on this guy.
The heavyweight undisputed title fight is live on talkSPORT on Saturday.
This next story, I'm not going to lie to you, requires us. I'm skating out onto some ice I don't know the thickness of, because the way you refer to people with certain kinds of health conditions, mental conditions, etc., it keeps moving all the time, and one tries to keep up as best as you can with the sensitivities of the age. But there is a story that has broken surrounding arguably the best footballer in the world, Lamine Yamal. We keep waiting for someone to replace Ronaldo and Messi and all those. He's already done it, let's be honest. He's well on his way to being the best footballer in the world, along with Florian Wirtz. I guess those are the two next candidates for that. Kylian Mbappe, we seem to have leapfrogged over him being the best player.
He irritates me anyway.
Yeah,
I think it's far too much going on with him. It's interesting, isn't it, that this PSG team has now arrived and done things without all of these so-called superstars and Galacticos.
Simon, you're causing my heart to soar like a hawk. You're proving once again that football is a team sport. You can have all the superstars you want, and it's cool if they're good team players. That's exactly what you want. But just trying to graft together a load of brilliant superstars, no, sir. Their team is brilliant now. Although Chelsea made them look very poor the other day. They did. All right, whatever you think about the Club World Championship, that was an actual football match.
Indeed,
and
it was.
Not played in searing temperatures. It was a proper game.
It was.
And jiu-jitsu, wasn't it? They used PSG's strengths against them. They counter-pressed them extraordinarily well. Lamine Yamal was 18. He had a party, and part of the entertainment there were the hiring of people with, I know all the scientific phrases here, but essentially is planning legal action over the situation. I mean, there are a million, we've talked about this a lot in preparation for the show. There are a million ways to look at this. Some of it's a matter of taste. Some of it is
it's not something I would do.
No, let's start with you. Let me fix you with this. Obviously, when people with a certain amount of wealth want to entertain their friends, novelty is past. But we know this from the days when people used to import into 18th century Britain wild animals from Africa to have at a party, say a lion, and everyone gasps. you, when you had a significant birthday, spent a lot of money to impress your guests and to entertain your guests.
With pop stars and things like that.
You reformed one of the greatest
specials,
bands that Britain's ever had.
Yeah.
That was a really clever thing to do. If I'd been there, if you'd asked me, I'd have gasped. My God, the specials are playing.
Absolutely.
Wow. This is a
well. When I first read it, I thought my mind turned to Ricky Gervais and thought, is this some sort of ridiculous parody of a Ricky Gervais show with Warwick Davis? And then I looked at it and looked at the people that are offended on behalf of other people, which we have a lifetime full of people that seem to be offended on behalf of other people. And then I look at the fact that seemingly the protagonists that were party to this, the dwarves themselves, were a free mind, contracted for commercial engagement, paid for it, weren't trafficked into doing something exploitative. They did what they wanted to do. And I find myself in a situation going, why do you feel the necessity to be offended on behalf of those that aren't? I do realise that people have to be sensitive and that you can't take liberties, and ultimately there's an element of unpalatability about this. There is an element of novelty factor that doesn't seem to be anything other than the expense of the potential entertainers. Why you would want to have dwarfs in a situation, I don't know. What they were asked to do, I don't know.
No. Let me quickly give you a quote though from one of the people who is representing the other argument. She's called Carolina Puente. She said, it's unacceptable that in the 21st century, people with dwarfism are still used for entertainment at private parties, particularly when public figures are involved. The dignity and rights of our community cannot be a source of amusement under any circumstance. And I that's an argument that also holds water. Let's be truthful.
It is. I mean, it's slightly pious to some extent because it goes from one extreme to the other. We are talking about people that are making commercial decisions of their own minds, and they are available to do that. I don't want to be too crass about it.
No.
But, you could become offended on behalf of strippers if you wanted to be, because of the choice of career that they involve themselves with. I understand what their motivation is. I look at it and say, what do you do if you want to hire a dwarf to pay somebody in a movie? Are they being commercially disadvantaged, or should you employ somebody that's of a normal height, for the want of a better expression, and then make them pose as a dwarf?
I think the difference between somebody who's acting and somebody who's handing out the drinks at a
But if you want to take it to
shindig.
extremes, if you want to take it to extremes, but the flip side of it is these individuals that have performed these functions, and whatever these functions were, and I'm not entirely sure that we absolutely know.
No, we don't.
Right, have done it out of their own choice through vocation and for financial benefits. And if they're comfortable and happy to do that, what gift is it for someone else to tell them that they shouldn't be doing it and that they're being exploited? And I think if you want to make it exploitation, if you want to suggest that it's something that's being poked fun at and people are enjoying it, and those that have are ridiculing those that haven't, yes, of course you could look at it for that prism if you want to.
One of the people involved said that they had danced, gave out drinks, and what was the third thing they said? They performed magic tricks. Let's say that, but that argument, the spectrum of arguments around that, what Miss Puente or Caroline Puente had to say is one thing. You could also say that absolutely they and one or two of the people involved themselves have said no one disrespected us. We worked in peace and all the rest of it. The issue here, I think, is Lamine. One of the issues for me is Lamine Yamal himself. Look, I'm going to use a phrase here. All age. Why you did the specials? Why would you expose yourself to this kind of negative publicity, whether it's overreacting or not, Simon? And I'm not saying it is.
I agree, but then footballers do a lot of things because there's two things that they're involved in: an immense amount of financial benefit at a young age, a lot of sycophancy with no one telling them the things to be done. Often parents living vicariously through their children, and so they don't even have the right parental relationship. I'm not suggesting that's the case in this instance. So there's a world, and when you talk to people like Danny Murphy and ex-footballers, they recognise. I
like why you're pointing to an empty chair.
Yeah, which probably could be the same thing if Danny was sat in it. But the idea that they are not part of an environment which is almost institutionalized, and when they live in this rarefied air where they're constantly told that they're wonderful, they're celebrated by grown men sobbing in the stands when they've done something
like
meaningful,
me,
and don't get a real context. And when they leave the world of football, they realize how selfish and unaware they've been about the world that exists outside of their rarefied air. So I understand how these sort of things happen, because you constantly see footballers putting themselves in the way of circumstances that you wish that they hadn't.
How does an 18-year-old who's already got his own responsibilities for Barcelona and the Spanish national team, how does he take control of this? Because I suspect that he did not put together the entertainment for this
I should
party.
imagine his ghastly little snot-gobbling agent was somewhere around him carrying his bag for him at the time. I mean, you look at these things. I mean, having lived in Spain for 25 years, and I'm not suggesting that I should parody the Spanish, but some of their laws are absurd, and some of the extremes that they go to are absurd. And I'm not trivializing the subject matter, but they even categorize the language that we use in this country, which is for, say, a more serious subject, I would suggest, but like sexual assault. In this country, it's no means no.
Yep.
In Spain, it's yes means, unless you've heard yes in a situation like this, then you are on the subject of being potentially challenged for an abuse if you're involved in but like Ribeira's was of that particular situation.
Sure.
He had a situation with Hermosa. The argument was she didn't say yes. So as on the basis of that, you were now found guilty or put in the way of a potential allegation of sexual assault. So
Well, whatever you think about Spain's laws, Lamine Yamal lives in that country.
Indeed.
And under those laws.
Indeed. But it's the length and breadth. And my point is whether I think the laws are ridiculous and slightly absurd and extreme and probably something that wouldn't happen in this country. You might have offended pressure groups. You might have people saying and wagging their finger like we so regularly do, whichever community it is, whether it's people waving rainbow flags at you, telling you that you must celebrate them for a month, and if you don't, then you're an awful person. Or in this instance, where the Spanish are saying these people, these free-minded individuals that are dwarfs, that want to occupy a space in society, want to earn money as a result of their particular circumstances, and are doing it of their own free will, we're offended on behalf of them.
Yeah, at least,
and we want to prosecute it under the law.
At least
we want to make it discriminatory.
At least they have free will, and I hope I'm not being culturally inappropriate here. I worry about in Spain about things that don't have free will. Bulls being run through the street till they're terrified, and even bulls being fought to the death in arenas for people's entertainment.
I think it's crass. I do think it's crass.
It is crass.
I think it's crass. I think it's unnecessary. But I think a lot of young footballers, again, young athletes, and I don't want to point my guns specifically at footballers, but you don't see it happening with young tennis players and young athletes, and maybe it's because of the disposable income, but tennis players still get an inordinate amount of money, or young golfers. It seems to be something in our space, which is the look at me culture, the Instagram culture. Look at Garnacho rolling around outside a house with a Rashford Villa shirt on in front of a Lamborghini and a Ferrari, and you get a context of the world that these kids live in.
Yeah, dim, absolutely dim that, and
guidance is important.
And I hope if Lamine has an ounce of the intelligence that he displays with a ball at his feet, that he'll say to whoever was involved say,
and he'll probably get a little bit of a word in his ear from the Catalonian giant saying, come on now, the world is your oyster. There's no necessity for these silly little things.
I would have believed that 15 years ago. Barcelona appear to me to be a club out of control these days.
I don't know.
Simon.
I still think they've got plenty of influence.
Yeah, you're listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Yeah, tomorrow Kelly and Jordan will be coming live from Wembley Stadium as we build up to Usyk versus Dubois 2. We're hoping to speak to both of the boxers. Simon knows them, he'll just get them in, I know he will.
Have you met Alexander Usyk?
No.
Class act.
Oh, amazing, impressive
Absolute
person to
class
work.
act at every level.
You think I'm here to work with you?
Now
I'm
you want to see
hoping
these guys. He's a
to
class
meet
act.
Alexander Usyk
Everything that you think a sportsman should be at the elite level, he embodies.
Yeah, of course. So that's huge coming up at the weekend. But we'll also be following tomorrow the early stages of the 153rd Open Championship, which tees off at beautiful Royal Portrush. If it's raining as hard as it was yesterday, I think it'll be an interesting golf tournament. Well, you already hear about flights.
It's going to rain on Saturday, apparently.
I was an hour late because they couldn't take off because of the rain. It was simply too much. And you'll hear live commentary on talkSPORT 2 from 7 a.m. on Thursday morning. Of course you will. Now, the tournament itself has been preceded by an extraordinary interview with Scotty Scheffler, the best player in the world, arguably, and who, if we listen to his words here, sort of staring into the existential void.
I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? You know, this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. That's why I talk about families being my priority, because it really is. I'm blessed to be able to come out here and play golf, but if my golf ever started affecting my home life, or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living. This is not the be-all, end-all. This is not the most important thing in my life, and that's why I wrestle with, why is this so important to me? Because, I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer.
Yeah, really interesting. For a start, of course, the media building up this don't want to hear that golf's not the most important thing in the world.
Yep.
And yet...
I think there's a lot of sense in what you said. I mean, it's a bit of existential navel-gazing, but notwithstanding that, I understood a lot of what he was saying. And I watched the Rory McIlroy situation. There's a lot of pushing back against the media characterisation of circumstances. And they lionise people, and then they demonise them in equal measure, right? And people go from being a hero to a zero. And he's talking about the reality of landing at the top of Everest and seeing what's up the top there, and you realise that actually there's more important things in life. And I read an article that he'd done where they said it in The Guardian as well, and he was talking about what it took to win things and how he wanted to win things, and when he got there, it was about what happens next. That's the tragedy of ambition. If you're an ambitious person and a successful person, an alpha like he must be to be the best golfer in the world, there is always this never-ending grind to achieve the next thing. So when you achieve something, it's like when Rory won the Masters, this wonderful achievement, I'm listening to the media 3 weeks later pulling him down and saying that his performance in the USPGA wasn't good enough, and his attitude in the media, that he didn't want to talk to people, and he said he'd earned the right. And I sat there saying to Jim, what a mean-spirited conversation. This was a guy that 3 weeks ago had done the most wonderful achievement, and
career
now
Grand Slam, been looking for a decade to do it.
It's what have you done for me lately? And that's the point that I think he's making. And also, you look vicariously through these people's lives, and without putting myself in that situation, I relate entirely to the idea that your family and the things that are more valuable to you will supersede your achievements, because those are the real things in life. And that's the point he's kind of making.
Is it easy to say that, though, from the top of the mountain, which he's definitely arrived at? Because to get there, you probably have to sacrifice some of the things what people would call normal in life.
But I don't think it's easier to say it. I think it's a great set of awareness of one's self. Now, some might be saying it's self-invested, self-involved. I think it's quite frank and quite refreshing. You guys here are sitting there listening to me, expecting me to tell you that everything I do, eat, sleep, whatever else, other terminology I can use, should be about golf. I breathe and I exist it. But actually, for me, this is a great way to earn a living. I love doing this. But let me get some priorities in my life. My priorities are the more important things, like my family.
I wonder how this would have gone down with your average Joe, who works just as hard as Scotty Scheffler, I presume, has to make the sacrifices, but is earning $1 1% of what he does.
Well, it shouldn't go down badly or well. It should go down with them in a way that they choose to digest that information. I used to look at things when I was really driven, and I'm still driven now, but I'm not as driven as I once was. And I, living in a very rarefied world that I created for myself, and then watching a very simplistic view.
Most people are glad to see you go there, Simon.
Yeah, sure. But here's my point without being pompous.
Right.
I'd be driving along the road, when Palace were promoted in the Premier League. I'm 35 years of age. I own a Premier League football club. I'm making films. I've got hundreds of millions of quid, and I'm driving down the road, and I'd see, please excuse this terminology, but understand the meanings. I'd see somebody digging a ditch, right, thinking about their lives, and think to myself, they're probably happier than I am because they're going to get their pay slip, go down the pub and have a pint and be quite comfortable in their world, whereas I am constantly driven to do the next bloody thing. Whatever I've got, not good enough. I want something bigger, better and bolder. And it's wearing and it's taxing and it provides you with no great joy. The joy goes instantaneous. You got it. Right. Yep. I've got it. What am I going to do next?
Absolutely.
And that's where he's coming from.
And if I may risk being pompous as well, I've done both things. I've done some business with our mutual friend David, and had to run that. But I do this for a living.
Football 365.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And, so at one stage it would be worth a small country.
I know.
Yeah. The point I'm going to make is it depends on what you're doing as well. Business, it does seem to me when I watch people like yourself and other friends of mine who would do, but it is an incredible hamster wheel. You've got to keep going. But you just done
sport,
that.
Though, isn't it?
Now this and but the
macro example is exactly prevalent.
Absolutely, I can't stand it. I'm in danger of doing it myself. People come out of the shower, they've just won the FA Cup or they've won the US Open, whatever it is, and we're asking them what's coming next. Give them the moment, give them the time to enjoy it. The difference, I would say, though, is doing something creative for a living. I hope that what I do, broadcasting, podcasting, all the things I do, there's creativity. That's a very privileged position too. If you're any good at it, because I get immense satisfaction from doing this show the best I can, and then I move on to the next one.
But it's also your world. So when you talked about the example earlier on of people sitting there that look at their world and go, "Well, I work hard for a living. I don't get to do the vocation that you do." But when it's your job, when you're a golfer, that's your job. That's all you know. When you're a footballer, people say, if I was them, I'd be walking around with a permanent grin on my face, living my life the best way I possibly could. And a lot of footballers walk around like impending doom. It's because it's their job. And when that's the only thing you know, it becomes your job. So this rarefied attitude towards, well, look at him. He's an artist. He's a creative person. He's a footballer. He's a golfer. They're living their best lives. They're living the lives they know, and it can still be monotonous and repetitive. Look at tennis players that burn out. So you think to yourself, what a life. Young kid going around the world, staying in the best hotels, playing tournaments.
It's terrible to me, Simon. It looks absolutely terrible to me.
Absolutely. But people look at it and go, well, that must be great. Then get into other people's world, wear other people's shoes. That doesn't mean I don't suggest that they should actually appreciate what they've got. But it's interesting to see him. I think it's as much to do with the conversation with the media than it is with himself. He's basically categorizing it in a way saying, oh, really? Okay, here's how it really looks from the inside out, rather than you lot thinking it looks like this. I think there's a refreshing sort of insight. I don't know why he'd want to do it, what the value of it is, but these sports personalities now are far bigger, whether I agree with it or not, than just someone that whacks a golf ball around.
Of course. And that's why people are talking about it. I also, it's odd, isn't it? Because he's out of his normal environment. Americans don't travel particularly well always, and the Open here is in Ireland on this occasion. Just a different experience brings things out. But I'm glad he said it because
it's what he thinks.
Yes, and at the bottom of it all as well. I know this. It really does. It is different. With most things, it's different if you've got the money that Scotty Scheffler has got. But the bottom line is a sick child is a sick child, whether you're a coal miner or whether you're the #1 golfer in the world. And so the background to everyone's life does have some universality that perhaps we don't recognise.
Some of the most unhappy people in the world are the people with the most money and most means, because it is isolationist. It does put you in a perspective where you've come from, you're no longer part of. And perhaps where you've landed, you don't want to be part of because you don't relate to that environment and you're quite happy being somewhere else. If you're the most successful person in the room, irrespective of this. So I look at things like this and think to myself, look, it's great that people speak this way. It gives you an insight into the mind of a supreme athlete, whether you believe it's existential navel gazing for the sake of it, or whether you appreciate the sentiments of a man saying, great game, great livelihood, I want to be the best at it, but that's my priority.
What makes you happy?
My children.
Okay, and that's the answer I was expecting, but I know you. Listen, thank you very much indeed for that. Next will be, there's so much sport coming up. I mean, yesterday was like a desert, wasn't it? There was no Tour de France. The tennis had ended. There was no football. It was a very, very odd day, but it's all coming at us now, and not least the next round of the quarterfinals of the Women's Euros. England have got a big challenge against Sweden. They've got an open training session right now, as I understand it. We'll be going live to that in just a few seconds' time here on talkSPORT, where you're listening to Jordan and Kelly.
Alexander Isak, how does a British transfer record of £120 million sound? That's what Liverpool are willing to offer should the striker decide to leave Newcastle and go to Merseyside. Well, the Magpies have expressed they don't want to get rid of the Swede, even in their bid for striker Hugo Ekitike. Former Newcastle winger Nobby Solano shared his thoughts on the matter.
The fans love it when you're always loyal to the team, loyal to the club. It's very tentative for Isak, you know. He's in great position. It's very tentative for the club, how much money they offer to him. But I think Eddie will be the guy. I mean, the manager won't let him to happen this situation.
Elsewhere, Brentford could be chasing Ipswich Omari Hutchinson as a potential Brian Mbeumo replacement. We also understand Ethan Nwaneri set to sign a fresh 4-year contract with Arsenal. For all the latest transfer news, head to our live blog at talksport.com. Bournemouth are preparing to make the Premier League's smallest stadium to the Premier League's second smallest stadium. The club wants to almost double the capacity of the Vitality to 20,200. They're hoping to complete the works by August 2027. Now, after Scotty Scheffler said this ahead of the Open this week.
I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point.
Golfing legend Dame Laura Davies is baffled by the comments from the world #1 and told talkSPORT he must be bored of winning.
That's what you go for, you know, those moments. And yeah, they're fleeting, but most players on tour don't get the luxury of winning that many times in a short span of time that Scotty's won. And if I was his fellow pros, I'd be thinking, well, you are making it look easy, but it's not as easy and it shouldn't be boring.
Well, despite Scheffler's comments, he has expressed his determination to win the major. Scheffler, Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm are considered the 3 favourites to win the Claret Jug. The Open at Port Rush gets underway tomorrow and talkSPORT 2 will keep you covered.
welcome back, good morning, welcome back to, well, not Jim White, actually me, Danny Kelly, and my old friend Simon Jordan. I have been coaxed back to the big city to work for a couple of days with Simon. Tomorrow we're going to be at Wembley Stadium as the build-up to Usyk Dubois 2 continues. You'll hear that, of course, live on talkSPORT. We'll be hopefully speaking to both of the protagonists in the course of that show. Plenty to get through today as well. Simon, I've got to say, since we started televising radio, whatever reasons, when the music plays, I tend to do a bit of chair dancing.
Yeah.
But now I've realised when I look at myself,
on screen, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I look like Donald Trump when he's doing his stood-up dancing. I really don't. I mean, obviously, if I was stood up, I'm pure northern soul.
I can just imagine you in a MAGA hat.
Oh, very, yeah. Can
right down your
can
street
you?
there.
Can you? Yeah, can you? Listen, the big sporting events keep coming at us. England are into the quarterfinals of the Women's Euros. They play Sweden tomorrow. It's an open It's live on talkSPORT, of course. It's an open training session today. Let's see what they're doing and how the lie of the land is unfolding as England head towards what they hope will be the retention of their trophy. Joining us now from the open training session, Courtney Sweetman-Kirk. Good morning, Courtney.
Yeah, good morning both. How are you?
Very, very good indeed. Open training session, Courtney. That usually means a few rondos. Is that what we're seeing now?
We are actually, we're going into a bit of a passing pattern rather. We normally get the first 15 minutes of training, so we get the warm-ups going into the passing patterns, and then sort of the main bulk of the session aren't for our eyes, just in case we leak any secrets. Okay, so through to the quarter-final. I think it's fair to say two very different Englands. The rather stodgy performance against France, and then latterly looking back to their very best form. Hopefully that's what we're going to see against Sweden. Yeah, and we're going to need to see that type of performance against Sweden, because they're a very, very good side in terms of, you see, very close to England in the world rankings, and I think pose a different threat to any other side we've played so far in terms of, you know, their stature. They've got a tall side, they're strong, they're combative, so especially from set pieces, I think they're going to cause us a little bit of an issue if we're not on top form. And also that sort of forward line, they've got really quick players, love to play on the counter-attack, and we saw, you know, in the first game of France that caused us a little bit of a problem. I know we've remedied that in the last two games, but yeah, Sweden's going to be a really tough game.
Courtney, have your apprehensions? I thought you spoke really well last week. You were on the show with us, and you were very to the point and very open about your reservations about England's performance. Obviously, they've bashed up the Dutch and they've gone on and dealt with the Welsh that we all thought they would do. Are the apprehensions that you were speaking of last week, have they been washed away, or do you still think that England have some significant challenges to overcome in and of themselves?
Yeah, what I would say is I think the apprehensions have certainly lessened, because the level of performance I've seen against the Netherlands and against Wales, and for me what really worried me in that France game was the energy, the lack of energy that I felt was in the game, but that certainly changed. But as we get now to a latter stage of the tournament, it always gets tough. As I say, Sweden are a really tough side. You know, you look at the semi-finals and you probably think on paper, you know, whoever we play we should win that, but again, if we're expecting probably Spain in the final, if we get that far, a really tough team. So the apprehensions have lessened in a sense of the level of performance, but we know now getting into the knockout stage of a tournament, there's never an easy game. But if England are on top form, then they're one of the best teams in the world. There's no doubt about that.
Courtney, it's interesting you should say that, because I would expect nobody was talking about Italy or Norway before the tournament started, yet they are the winner of that tie will be the ones that England take on in the semi-final. So I know the manager would hate me saying this, but this is almost the biggest game they'll have to play before they get to the final. But that brings its own pressure. This is almost a semi-final bringing against Sweden.
Yeah, it is, and we look at, as I say, we look at it on paper, and you look at Italy, Norway, and you think, you know, if we're on top form, then we're more than capable of beating those sides. But, you know, you never know what happens. It only takes one mistake. I think we saw it in the Sweden-Germany game, the last group stage, where a mistake, there's a sending off, and that probably completely changes the complexion of the game. So, look, at this stage of a tournament, it's never easy, but I always go back to, you know, if England play well, if they are playing on top form, then they can beat any team in the world. Yes, Spain would obviously be a tough test, but we've seen we beat them earlier in the year in the Nations League. So it's always tough at this stage of the tournament. And I think you're right. You don't want to sort of be looking forward and looking ahead too much. I think that's something that, that us in the media do. But in camp, they will be solely focused on the next game, Sweden, getting through that. And then obviously if they get to the semi-finals, then focus on Italy or Norway, whoever it may be.
Courtney, I'll get more about who's out training there and who's not training in 1 second. But we want to hear about from the England captain, Leah Williamson. And she has been talking and, backing up Courtney in the idea that Sweden are a really, really difficult side.
Yeah, we spoke the history, or Sweden's previous results at tournaments are incredible. They're relentless when it comes to tournament football. So yeah, we've been looking, and they're just a very organised team. They work hard. Obviously, some familiar faces. We know their characteristics, so it will be a tough game.
Yeah, Leah not giving away too much there. Courtney, what part of the fun of going to open training sessions is seeing who's fully involved, who is doing little laps around the edge of the pitch with one of the trainers, and who is not there at all, who's got their flip-flops back in the dressing room. England got the full squad out?
They've only got 22 out. Unfortunately, Jess Park has come down with a migraine, so she's expected to be fine for tomorrow. But I imagine at the moment she's sort of in a dark room, taking some painkillers, hopefully having a bit of sleep. I actually interviewed Jess Park yesterday, so I'm hoping it's nothing to do with me, and I've not talked her into a migraine. But no, they're expecting her to be fine tomorrow. But everyone else out on the pitch, full training, no sort of, as you say, there's no player off to the side doing a separate training session. Everyone else is at full fitness.
Okay, which takes us to the game tomorrow. England will have restored their confidence after that poor start against France. And as Leah was saying, they know the Swedish players inside out. Some of them play, of course, in England, and they've watched them and played against them regularly over the years. How will England approach the game? Personally, you mentioned the energy levels. England should probably go for this Swedish team, will they?
Yeah, they have to, and I think all the way throughout the tournament, Serena Wiegman, the Lionesses manager, has been sort of very importantly stating it's about England, it's about our game plan, it's about if we focus on our game plan and execute it in the right way, then we believe that we will do enough to win games. And she was very sure of saying after the France game that we didn't execute that game plan in the way that we should have. So yeah, they're going to go for Sweden, as you mentioned. Obviously, the sides know each other well, sort of Leah Williamson and Stina Blackstenius especially, obviously teammates. There's Ritten Kaneryd in there that plays for Chelsea, Bjorn that plays for Chelsea as well. So there's a lot of players, well-known WSL players in that side. But yeah, they've got to go for it, England. They've got to believe in themselves, and in terms of that high press, that energy has been the focal point of the last two games, winning the ball high up the pitch and obviously getting into positions early where they're either scoring goals or winning penalties, and putting teams under pressure. And I'll expect nothing different from the Lionesses tomorrow.
Listen, thank you very much indeed. That's the very latest from Courtney Sweetman-Kirk there, live at the England training ground. The game against France is now a distant memory, Simon. I was going to say, and as the Italian team has proved over the years, you don't have to start these tournaments well, but they don't get to the tournaments anymore.
Absolutely right.
So
yeah.
I can't. That's now a cliche from the past.
But there was so much background noise going into this tournament, wasn't there? The results weren't great leading into it. Obviously, they beat the Jamaicans 7-0, which gave everybody a little bit of encouragement.
Several leading players decided to, all of which would have set alarm bells off. Of course, it did.
Yeah, but and then a slightly tepid performance that got them smashed by the French after the first 20 minutes where they were quite good.
Could have been the best thing for them. That was a wake-up call.
Liven them up. And they should. I mean, the Welsh were always a gimme with respect.
And the Welsh women were learning the game at tournament level. And we spoke to Uma Garav on Sunday on Trans Europe Express, and she was saying the Welsh team will, believe it or not, will benefit from that drubbing. They'll see the levels that they've got to head for. Now, you don't want that 6 games in a row.
Yeah,
but once in a while.
It's like saying San Marino have been benefited from getting beaten forever, haven't they? It's not benefited from that much, is it?
No, what's happened is that the Nations League, though, has given them international opportunities against teams more at their level, and they are improving as a result.
Difficult to get worse, though, wouldn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, or is it that teams like England are coming back to the pack? Who knows? Listen, obviously this time of year, transfer speculation and indeed transfer drama. Hello, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest is very high on the agenda. Nobody is more across this than talkSPORT's own Alex Crook. He joins us next here on Jordan and Kelly. listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Yeah, Simon's noticing that normally I'm rotating Kelly and Jordan and Kelly. Yeah, but when it comes to the big commercial stuff, they want to hear my name first. Simon, make no mistake about that.
Away you go.
Transfer speculation is one thing. Transfer fact is another. Alex Crook usually has the latter rather than the former. He joins us now. Hello, Alex.
Apparently.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Well, we're doing great. I'm really enjoying being back in the studio in London, maybe with Simon, very much so. Nona Madueke, if you told me 6 months ago he'd be moving to Arsenal, I'd have been astonished. But there you are. He is, and for a pretty decent fee too. And that's going to be announced today, is it, or completed today?
Well, I think it's been completed. I'm not sure exactly when the announcement will be, because we know that clubs like to make all singing, all dancing announcement videos now. But yeah, 5-year contract has been signed. Obviously, he was given permission to fly back early from the Club World Cup, missed the final, in order to undergo his Arsenal medical. £52 million the fee, so profit for Chelsea. I think they paid around £29 million to bring him to Stamford Bridge. So I guess if you're a Chelsea fan, if you're Todd Bowley, you'll say, well, this is the model working. You sign players for one fee and you sell them for a profit. Arsenal fans aren't exactly welcoming Madueke with open arms.
Was there not a petition against him being allowed to come to the club?
Yeah, I thought that was quite pathetic, to be honest with you.
I bet Simon thought it was a great idea to support. What do you think about the fact they got 4,000 signatures saying he's not fit to be at the?
I think it's mean-spirited. I don't like it. I think Alex's summation of it is probably right. Probably Arsenal Fan TV organised it. They're a grotty little bunch of scroats, aren't they?
I mean, I'm sure he'll want to play more often, but they definitely need somebody to stand. Saka can't play every game because with England he's got to play 70 games.
It's also an implicit criticism of the manager, isn't it? Because he's the person that's selecting the player. So you're not only affecting a player. And I mean, I'm not suggesting players shouldn't be affected. I'm just simply saying is no necessity for it. And your manager, who you believe in, surely has made a choice he wants his player. So what is the purpose of this? Pack it in.
I'm sorry, I'm preparing my run-up here. Well, of course, Arsenal fans are going to be a bit upset. It's so long since they won a trophy,
Indeed.
Simon. It's
Indeed.
very long
Indeed.
since they won a trophy. Ipswich Town are favourites, Alex, to get promoted out of the Championship. But they've already lost Liam Delap from the team that played... let's be honest, so averagely in the Premier League last season. But their other outstanding player, looked to me at least, is Amari Hutchinson. Are they going to hang on to him?
Yeah, I thought he was really good for England at the Under-21 European Championships as well. This is an interesting one because he had a release clause of £35 million that actually expired at 5 o'clock yesterday. Now, Brentford were clearly aware of this. My understanding is they made numerous attempts to try and trigger that release.
How did they find out about the release clause? Was it not a secret?
Well, absolutely. Clearly no confidentiality issues here. But yeah, they made several attempts yesterday to try and trigger that release clause. I think they hit the number, but they didn't hit the payment terms that Ipswich wanted. So that clause is now expired. So he's available on the open market. The message coming out of Portman Road is that Ipswich don't particularly want to sell him. So I'd imagine now if Brentford want to get Hutchinson, they're going to have to go above the 35 million. I guess if you're a Manchester United fan, you'll see this as a positive, that it means they're planning for the departure of Brian and Bumo. But at the moment, that one does seem to be a little bit of a standstill in terms of what Manchester United are willing to pay and what Brentford are asking for. They want £62.5 million guaranteed. That's what Manchester United have paid for Matheus Cunha. Brentford clearly feel and Bumo is worth that, and I think they want some add-ons as well, probably taking this deal nearer 70 million now than 60. So it is starting to become a little bit expensive for Manchester United.
It'd be interesting to see if the player chips in. Any indication Alex, the player is going to chip in with his 2 pence about transfer requests and things of that nature?
Well, he hasn't so far. He's back at training, reported back a little bit later than some of his teammates, but that was pre-planned. I think he's made it clear to Brentford and Bumo that he only wants to go to Manchester United. I believe he did hold some talks with Newcastle earlier in the window, but he made it clear to them that
it's not helpful, is it? And it's great that he made it clear for Manchester United. That's benefit to Man United. It doesn't help Brentford in the commercialisation of a deal where they can get some commercial jeopardy in it by pitching him against 2 clubs.
No, but you'll know, Simon, that when a player actually formally puts in a transfer request, they can be hit in the pocket for that.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they miss out on certain bonuses. That's why I'm a little bit dubious of the wording of these 5 Manchester United players who have all, by by all accounts, indicated they wish to leave. I'd be surprised if any of those 5 have actually formally put in a transfer request.
Yes, the club have indicated to them that they're going to be leaving. Yeah. So just very quick on Manchester United. Jim Ratcliffe has gone in there with an absolute scythe to the costs at the club. Yeah. Some of it ludicrous, getting rid of staff who've been there for years and years and years. I can't imagine it costing them very, very much. But at what stage does messing about for a couple of million quid over Brian Mbeumo become counterproductive for the football side of an operation? I understand controlling costs, but...
Well, it's a balance, isn't it? It depends if you think messing about is a difference between 52 million and 70 million. I mean, there is a difference.
I'm used to Daniel Levy, don't forget.
Yeah, so you know it well. I mean, we've got to get some context. If you're prepared to pay 52 million pounds for a player, you don't really want to pay 62. And if you know that the player's already indicated in no uncertain terms he wants to come to you, that you know you're going to get your way somewhere along the line. It's about how quickly you don't blink.
Yeah. Well, all right. So soon the pre-season tours will start. The manager, the coach would want the player on the tour.
Yeah, sure he would. But also, let's get context about the reality of money. I hear what you're saying, which is the underlying inference. Get it done. It's worth more getting it done than having the uncertainty.
I'm asking the question.
I would sweat the asset. I wouldn't want to give Brentford precisely what they want. First of all, I don't think the player's worth that kind of money. He's only worth it because Man United want him. And it's
fantastic season last year.
Sure, but we all know, and Alex will attest to this, there's a very big difference between putting a Brentford shirt on and putting a Manchester United shirt on and all that goes with that. And there's no guarantee this player can step into that fold. Yes, there's an indication that he's done very well and played very well in not just this season, but in previous seasons. But the dynamics change at Man United, so I wouldn't be... A deal is what works for both parties. If the only deal on the table is what Man United want, then it ain't a deal. No. And if the only deal that's on the table is what Brentford want, then it ain't a deal. Somewhere in the middle is where the deal is.
Okay. Even bigger money involved with the proposed transfer of Alexander Isak to Liverpool. I don't know whether this is just Liverpool flexing their muscles, or there's something real in this. What's the story here, Alex?
Oh, no, the interest is real. No question about that. I think if you asked Liverpool at the start of the summer who was their dream target, they wouldn't necessarily have said Florian Wirtz. Not that he's not going to be a fantastic addition to the Premier League. It would have been Alexander Isak. They've long time looked at the Swede and thought he could really come in and do a job at Anfield. I think the key here is that there's been no formal offer, and there won't be a formal offer unless Liverpool get an indication from Newcastle that they are open to selling Alexander Isak. At the moment, the stance is clear. He's not for sale. They are prepared to offer him a contract that makes him the highest paid player in the club's history. I guess the question for Isak now is, now that this Liverpool interest is public, and he would have been aware of it anyway, does his head get turned? Does he start doing what Simon was suggesting that maybe Brian Mbeumo might, and push for a move to Liverpool? I think it's a really interesting dynamic when you look at the relationship between the two clubs. The two big decision makers at Liverpool, Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, two people that Eddie Howe, who basically is running Newcastle now in the absence of a sporting director, and Andy Howe there as well. They're all very well linked. They know each other well from when Richard Hughes and Eddie Howe were players at Portsmouth. So there's a lot of respect between the two clubs. So I don't see this as an attempt to unsettle Alexander Isak. What I see this is Liverpool getting wind of the fact Newcastle were in for Ugo Ekitike. Does that mean that they're willing to cash in on Alexander Isak? If they're not, do we make a rival bid for Ekitike and try and bring him in as a new number 9? Because there aren't that many out there.
Alex, you know the market as well as anybody. Take the push me pull you of a chairman arguing each other. How much is Alexander Isak actually worth to Liverpool?
Well, I asked Eddie Howe that question last season, and he told me he was priceless. So I think that tells you exactly how highly he regards him. Clearly, no player is priceless. I think Newcastle, if Liverpool did slap down £150 million, might have a decision to make. But I don't see that happening unless they get the nod that actually they are open to offers. But I think it's definitely going to take a British record fee, and I think it would take a British record fee far eclipsing what Liverpool have paid for Wirtz already this summer.
What fun. Alex, two quick names for you, both very familiar. Granit Xhaka?
Yeah, this is incredible. Sunderland have had a really interesting window so far, and they are in talks about bringing Granit Xhaka, former Arsenal captain, back to the Premier League. He's been a revelation at Bayer Leverkusen.
Absolutely brilliant, yeah.
So if they could get this deal done, I think it would be a real coup for Sunderland. Yes, he's at the veteran stage of his career now, but I would suggest he's probably more dynamic than, say, Jordan Henderson, who was also linked with a return to the Stadium of Light. I guess the question for Granit Xhaka, having been playing in the Champions League for the last couple of years, does he want to step into a relegation battle? There's interest from Saudi Arabia and clubs across Europe as well. But what this does show is that maybe unlike the three teams who've come up in the last couple of seasons, Sunderland are going to have a real go at staying there.
And finally, a name that comes up virtually every transfer window because he's been playing for the last 47 years, Ashley Young.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is incredible in its own right as well. I had to look him up. He turned 40 last week, wants to continue playing.
What a man.
And there's a possibility he makes a fairy tale return to Watford, the club where he started his career. My understanding is they're actively exploring a deal. The new head coach there will have the final say, but they've got no concerns about age or fitness. There are other Championship clubs showing interest as well, but Ashley Young, I'm told, is keen to go back to Vicarage Road.
Listen, absolutely just what we needed there. The facts, the hard facts, and not the usual mishmash of speculations that I always get involved in. Thanks very much, Alex Crook. Alex, of course, is all over the station, all throughout this window. And if he says it, it's usually right. No one can be 100% right about transfers, as the ongoing business about Morgan Gibbs White shows. 1 minute that's on, the next minute is very much off. And my learned friends are going, oh, lovely, look at that. Might get a few bob out of that. You're listening to Kelly and Jordan here on talkSPORT.
Alexander Isak, how does a British transfer record of £120 million sound? That's what Liverpool are willing to offer should the striker decide to leave Newcastle and go to Merseyside. Well, the Magpies have expressed they don't want to get rid of the Swede. Former Newcastle winger Nobby Solano shared his thoughts on the matter.
He's in great position. It's very tentative for the club how much money they offer to him. But I think Eddie will be the guy. I mean, the manager won't let him to happen this situation.
For all the latest transfer news, head to our live blog at talksport.com. Bournemouth are preparing to make the Premier League's smallest stadium to the Premier League's second smallest stadium. The club wants to almost double the capacity of the Vitality to 20,200. They're hoping to complete the works by August 2027. Now, after Scotty Scheffler said this ahead of the Open this week.
I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
Golfing legend Dame Laura Davies is baffled by the comments from the world number one and told talkSPORT he must be bored of winning.
That's what you go for, you know, those moments. And yeah, they're fleeting, but most players on tour don't get the luxury of winning that many times in the short span of time that Scotty's won.
The Open at Portrush gets underway tomorrow, and talkSPORT 2 will keep you covered.
Time now, of course, to catch up with all the odds thanks to BetMGM.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18+gambleaware.org.
Chris Rock, isn't he great? I work with Chris. That means I've worked with Chris Rock. That's good, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, did you not go and punch him?
We're joined now by Charlie Robertson from BetMGM to look at today's top stories and the latest odds attached to them. Good afternoon, good morning. Good morning, Charlie.
Morning, Danny. How are you?
Really, really good and great to talk to you. Have any moves in the transfer market so far changed this season's odds?
Yeah, you're just discussing it with Cricky, Danny, so I thought it was best to sort of start on the transfer stuff. Obviously, Alexander Isak's the big story at the moment. He was actually 3-1 to join Liverpool this time last week, but I think all the speculation has sort of persuaded punters to have a bit of a bet on him to move to Anfield. He's actually odds on now at 4-5, which is the same price he is to stay at Newcastle. So I think it seems quite 50-50 where he'll end up. And the other man in this sort of saga, Ekatike, is actually odds on to join Liverpool. He's odds against to stay at Newcastle. So, yeah, I think it's one that feels like it could roll on for a bit longer, but it does feel like Liverpool probably in the box seat in terms of the prices anyway on where those guys will end up. And just in terms of how those affect the top four, Danny, we did have Newcastle odds on, but they're actually now out 7-4, so quite a big drift on them playing Champions League football the season after next. Chelsea 3-5, Villa and United 4-1, and your side, Danny, Spurs at 5-1. Danny, I'll come to you on Spurs and obviously on the transfer stuff. You've obviously brought in Kudus, and there's obviously big links with Gibbs White. Where do you think you guys need to strengthen next? And I imagine with lots of...
I haven't got a slightest doubt about that. I love the Spurs players, all of them now, because they won that trophy in Bilbao, but that is not a Premier League top four midfield. Let's be honest about it. Very, very good young players in Sarr and Bergvall, but they need a solid, experienced, they get called six, straightforward defensive midfielder, particularly if the fullbacks are going to be as adventurous as they are. And I'm sure Thomas Frank knows this is better than I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Who that person is another story. João Paulinho, he's not doing anything by Munich. Get him back, you know.
Yeah, he was very good at Fulham, wasn't he? So yeah, that'd be a good shout.
Listen, the Open starts at Royal Portrush, live on talkSPORT 2 all this week. There's going to be hardly any room for you to do talking, Simon. There's so much live sport on the stations. What are the chances of a European win there, Charlie?
Yeah, obviously a really strong European challenge, Danny. Obviously, Rory McIlroy, the obvious one. He missed the cut here at Portrush in 2019. He's a 7-1 chance. He'll obviously have many followers. The winner that year, Shane Lowry, is another plenty will fancy at 30-1. The one I quite like the look of is Sepp Straka at 50-1. I know Danny Murphy's a big fan as well. He's won twice this year on the PGA Tour, was 7th in Scotland last week and was 2nd at Hoyle a couple of years ago, so I thought he could go quite well. But as you mentioned, Danny, there's so many you can make a case for. It does feel really open this year. So yeah, lots of each way alternatives, but that's the one I came down on.
Yeah, I think we asked the question about Europeans because Americans take one look at the coastal conditions around the Atlantic island of Ireland and think, oh my God, because sometimes up that part of the world, they'll be hitting the ball into when it'll come back slightly towards them. If the wind blows, the American players are all great. You look at the money they're earning, but they don't get to play in that very, very often.
You got any miserable, nasty odds for like saying Rory McIlroy doesn't make the cut again?
I do, Simon. If you give me 2 seconds, I can tell you what price he is to miss the cut.
Have you seen the films of him, Simon, breaking the course record at 16 at Portrush?
I've seen certain stuff.
With his blonde curls. Yeah. Have you ever thought about going curly, Simon?
I haven't actually. I did have a perm when I was 16. It was a terrible thing.
Yeah.
I think I watched Dirty Dancing or something, and I thought I got some inspiration, or Footloose. I think it was Footloose. I was listening to Denise Williams. Let's Hear It About the Boy, and I thought I should have a blonde perm. Which got me suspended from school as a result of it.
This discussion of your, and of course I'm in a glass house here discussing people's haircuts. Yeah. The ever-changing hue of your haircut has been one of the joys of our relationship. But this must have given you enough time now, Charlie, to find the odds.
Yeah. I have. He's 9-2 to miss the cut, Simon. Okay. Yeah, as you said, he missed it here last time, and obviously the pressure of being a sort of home open for him might be a lot. But yeah, 9-2 to miss the cut.
You did mention Danny Murphy there. He's given us some picks for the Open. Tell us what they are.
He has indeed. We're going to be boosting both of those prices. He likes the look of Bryson DeChambeau. He hasn't got a great Open record, but as we all know, he's very dangerous if he's on his game. So he's out to 25-1 from 20-1. And the other player Danny fancies is Matt Fitzpatrick. Played really well in Scotland last week, and we've pushed his price out to 50-1, which is a big price, I think, for a player who should know these conditions fairly well.
Yeah, it should be great. Thank you very, very much indeed, Charlie. That was a look at all the latest odds thanks to BetMGM. Visit betmgm.co.uk or, obviously, download the app. It's 18+, of course, and begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18+, gambleaware.org.
Yeah, I've got a couple of minutes here to discuss your old club, Crystal Palace. Yep. Some of the fans, not very happy about this decision from UEFA. I got to be honest, I'm not very happy with it either. I know technically Palace may have broken the rules, but what UEFA picks and chooses which rules is going to enforce and with what severity. I don't like it. I think you're either everybody is subject to all the rules, selling peanut stalls to your mate and saying that's income and all the rest of it, or nobody's subject to any of the rules. But listen, there was a protest anyway. I think several thousand Crystal Palace fans turned up. Their leader was called John, and he spoke to Ian Abrahams.
In terms of what you hope to achieve from it?
We hope to achieve what is rightfully ours, which is the reinstation of Crystal Palace Football Club within the Europa League, and nothing less.
If you don't get that?
If we don't get that, then this campaign against UEFA and those people that have fundamentally changed the game of football and taken it away from the working man in England will be sustained and continued throughout next season.
You are still in Europe, though, so that is something.
It's not about something. We don't want crumbs, we want the whole loaf. We've won the FA Cup, and we're owed that, and we want it.
Very good. And finally, you mentioned that there'll be more protests around here, or what are you planning?
We're sending a small delegation of lads to get out to UEFA headquarters and continue the protest from there. Other than that, keep watch online and you'll see what happens.
Simon, the ins and outs of this has been widely discussed already. Yeah. I'm just interested in the idea of the protest, because we've seen, the club I support, Spurs, regular and very, very well attended marches before home games against Daniel in its rules, or a rule of the club, whatever. It's actually a sign of the increasing gap between football clubs and their supporters, that the supporters feel so powerless that they need to take to the streets.
Or it's indicative of a more activist mentality that's pervading society. It could be a combination of the two, couldn't it? The tragedy for this circumstance, and I don't really apologise for making these observations, is that the UEFA aren't doing anything that is fundamentally wrong. They have a rule, whatever you think of that rule, and I think it's a stupid rule.
It is a stupid
but it's
rule,
also designed to ensure that sporting integrity is maintained. That's the principle behind it. What they seem to have lost in their mentality is that economic benefits aren't the same as decisive influence on the football field. So because you're a significant shareholder doesn't mean that you have decisive influence on the sporting integrity of a football club. You either want multi-club ownership and you want to allow it, or you don't.
Personally, I wouldn't have allowed it because I could see this all
but
coming.
neither would I, Dan.
No.
But the change of ownership, the big thing about the world, and I had this conversation with Arsene Wenger in Switzerland about the big thing that he thinks has changed in football is not the fans, not the players, not the managers, but the owners. I would suggest that everybody's changed because the dynamics have changed. This is not UEFA's fault. And people might think I've got a motivation here. I think Parish has done a remarkable job at times, irrespective of my own personal relationship with him. I think the club have been more successful under his tenure than ever under mine and under Ron's previous to him. So you have to give him all of the chops for that. This is on him. This is on Palace. This is not a rule that hasn't been around for 17 years. This isn't a rule that wasn't reinforced in 2017 with the RB case. Everyone understood the parameters of it. This isn't a rule that was dropped into an anonymous info box at Crystal Palace. This is the same rule that was dropped in alongside other rules via the Premier League, via UEFA, that Crystal Palace have responded to previously. This is on Parish and the other members of the board. And if people think I've got an agenda to say that, I don't. I don't want Palace to be in this situation. Ironically, there's a part of me that believes by being in the European Conference League, it'll be better for Palace because it might give them an opportunity to have 2 seasons in Europe because they could quite meaningfully win this competition.
That's true. They could definitely.
And then you've got 2 seasons. Textor was in the studio last week. Whatever you think of John Textor, whatever you don't think of John Textor.
My views are influenced by those of Andy Brassell.
Sure, but Andy Brassell hasn't met John Textor and doesn't know all the facts. And I know lots of them, and I have met John Textor. What I can tell you is that Textor put 150 million quid into Crystal Palace. I put it into Crystal Palace, which went into the pockets of the shareholders that were there, and also to bankroll a football club for a very difficult period in COVID. And if they hadn't have had that money, they might have had a few additional problems. When you took that money, you knew that you had a situation surrounding a person that ultimately has a percentage interest in your football club, and then a year later goes and buys an interest in Lyon. You knew that you had a potential conflict because it is not beyond the wit of man
to end up in the Europa League,
to be in a European competition because half the bloody Premier League can get into one.
Of course, in his mind, Lyon would always be in the Champions League and Palace might win the FA Cup. But of course, Lyon.
But you have to be diligent. If Manchester United can plan for it, if other people can plan for it, then ultimately they should. So should Crystal Palace. Now the fans have every right to be irritated and aggravated by it because on the field they won this situation, and we've got too much going off the field now that is changing the direction of football. But they are, with due respect, they're pointing their guns at the wrong people. The person they should be pointing their guns at is Parish. You know, even the interview that Parish does with Sky the other day, which with due respect to Carvey, who I like, was a little bit of a soft soap, which was, you know, when I was asked a question about decisive influence, my answer was, well, my son has decisive influence. My 8-year-old son or my football. The answer to the question is, does it have any influence? The answer is no.
Yeah, that was distracting, wasn't it? Listen, it is a matter, of course, of no comfort to the Palace fans who are marching, but it is an indication of the progress of the club. You may keep quiet here because the last time there was a big march, the club, they were marching to save the club from having to sell the stadium to avoid liquidation. Due to that, you remember all that.
None of that was true, by the way. Actually,
well, people were told to go and march.
Sure, and created an opportunity because Parish created an opportunity to piggyback off the back that I'd negotiated a stadium through Lloyds Bank. So none of that's true. But there's also marches on. You know, I remember years ago in 2003 when the football clubs marched on the Houses of Parliament because of the collapse of ITV Digital, and it achieved the square root of bugger all.
People like to have their say, though, Simon,
and that's entirely right.
Yeah.
But they also need to be contextual in what they're saying. You know, calling UEFA, and I've got no love for UEFA. I've got no love for CEFA, and I've got no love for FIFA. You and I used to kick those particular people around in the studio for sport. Right? But this is not about corruption. And your analysis earlier on about sanctioning people is probably not right in this instance. I understand why you've said it. UEFA put in a rule, Palace didn't comply with it. What do you want to do? Suggest that Palace should be given clemency because they didn't comply with the rule that they had a perfect choice to do?
Listen, it's a free world. If you were on that march, by all means, give us a ring. 03717 223344. Let me say that more slowly. 03717 223344. Come on and tell us why you were on the march and what you hope to achieve. I'd be very interested to hear your voice. 03717 22 3344. If you don't ring, there's a section put aside for me and Simon to sit here just saying how great it was when Palace and Spurs won those trophies. I insisted on that before I flew in from Ireland. Jim White chooses all these banging tunes. Of course he does. You're listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. Okay, let's take a call in. I think Anthony was on the march, I think, yesterday. Good afternoon, Anthony.
Good morning, chaps. How are we?
You're right, 9 minutes. You're correct. It is still morning. We're pretty good. You were on the march yesterday at Sellers Park, yes?
I was indeed. Me and my 8-year-old son went down there. We're season ticket holders. As soon as they put the call out about the protest, it was a no-brainer. It didn't take thinking about. I think this decision by UEFA is just absolutely outrageous. It's unjust. You get lots of other clubs out there that are breaching the rules and receiving fines as punishments, but it just feels like UEFA have sort of thrown the book at us. Anyone with any common sense that looks into the ownership structure at Palace can see that Harris is the main man in charge. Textor had 25% of the voting rights. So So, you know, I don't see how the conflict of multi-club ownership was there in the first place, and I feel like it's just, you know, completely unjust and outrageous that Palace fans are being made to suffer this punishment, and we're not just going to take it lying down.
I hear that, and forgive me, I see Crystal Palace, and I love the Crystal Palace fans. I've always said to Simon, I believe it's the best atmosphere in any ground in London. I love going to watch football there because the crowd are part of the experience. But UEFA is this big monolith, wherever they're based these days, Neon or wherever they're based. What do you hope to achieve by marching, other than showing your dissatisfaction?
You know, I think a lot of Palace fans are not unaware that this is probably going to fall on deaf ears, and, you know, people probably not going to sit up and take notice. But you know, I refer back to my previous point. We can't just sit there and do nothing. We've got to get out there. We've got to make our voices heard, and, you know, try and get as many people on our side as possible. And even if it gets one person to sit up and say, right, you know, we need to look at this situation, then that's all we can do. You know, they're talking about potentially moving the date forward back again next season to put shares in a blind trust, and, you know, I just think it's just
but it wouldn't have made any difference. And the irony of the situation is that, you know, if you look at David Blitzer, he's probably more multi-club ownership than even Textor was. So it's not just Textor. You've got Bromby with David Blitzer. And so there's a lot more complications. Without wanting to jump on the back of it, your energies, and I understand why you're doing it, because you're frustrated, and it is an injustice in its own instance, because it was earned on the field, and it should be that Palace in there. No one's. When we go into this competition, Textor sold his shares. There's no harm now. There's no playing in a competition where there's no compromise. But the issue that you guys have, you have to ask questions of the ownership how they've allowed this, because this rule has been around for 17 years.
Yeah, I agree with that, Simon. Look, can I just ask your opinion on something?
Mate.
You know, as you just expressed this whole thing with Blitzer and, you know, Bromby. So presumably, you know, if there's a conflict of interest, a multi-club ownership conflict with us and Leon, is the case not the same for us and Bromby? But we've been
But it should be,
down in conference.
and it should be actually. And there's a question to be asked as how it's being allowed that Palace could go into the European Conference League, given the structure of the Bromby situation. They'll argue that Blitzer holds his shares in Palace via Global, I think it is, or HSBE, and holds them in Global in Bromby, and that might be a get around. But I think the UEFA have missed it, and Palace have gotten away with this opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, I'm like you. I'm disappointed that Palace aren't getting the opportunity in the Europa League. But the flip side of it also is, Palace can go and win the European Conference League, and then you've got 2 seasons in Europe.
Yeah, I do think we've got a good chance of going and winning it, you know. But we've earned our rightful place in the Europa League.
I agree. I agree with you.
I've got no skin in the game at all here, particularly. UEFA have got to look at themselves in one way, Simon, and that's simply this. To the uneducated outside eye, Leon have been a financial basket case for several years now, living from hand to mouth, having to sell players on day X to pay bill Y. Crystal Palace appear to be a stable, properly run football club, and one has been given advantage over the other. And
they're different arguments, but they've also got to be grown up about how they define what is decisive influence. They've got to get proper categorisation. It isn't just about shareholding. Economic benefits do not define decisive influence on a football field.
Yeah, we've got another Palace fan here. We've got Simon, who's a Crystal Palace fan as well. Simon?
Yeah, how you doing?
We're really good. Let's confuse everybody by having 2 Simons. Two Crystal Palace Simons. What did you want to say?
There's only one Mr. Chairman in my eyes. So, guys, what my biggest gripe is that if somebody said to us at the beginning of the FA Cup campaign that a place in the Europa Conference League was up for grabs, I would have been absolutely happy with that, because it's Palace in Europe, and like we say, it's a possible 2 years if we go in the Conference League. But what my biggest gripe with this whole situation is when Leon have got into the Europa League because they finished 6th in their league and we finished 12th. But when did finishing 6th in the league ever gazump the fact that we have won our country's domestic trophy? Because if you don't win the league in our country, then winning the FA Cup's the second best thing.
I guess the answer to that, Simon, is that's the rules.
But it doesn't gazump either, because both teams should be in that competition. The problem is the multi-club ownership.
20 years ago, 20 years ago, we had the Cup Winners' Cup, and you would get into Europe via the Cup Winners' Cup, not via your...
I understand.
Look, we're living in a world where the team that finishes 17th in England can qualify for the Champions League.
Exactly.
I mean, that is the rule. I'm currently the beneficiary of it. You're currently the victim of it. Next year, it'll be somebody else feeling the pain. Still can't get over the fact that the 17th best team in England will be in the Champions League next year. Listen, thank you for the calls. Thank you very much indeed. Look, we'll make space if you've got further views on this. 03717 22 3344. What, if anything, can be achieved by the March? And the other question is, I want to hear from Crystal Palace fans. Actually, I think they'll start as favourites for the conference.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a brilliant thing if Palace were to go and win a European trophy? Once again, cementing London's place.
It's another way of looking at it.
Once again, cementing London's place as the greatest football city in the world. Sorry, Buenos Aires. 03717 22 3344.
Alexander Isak, how does a British transfer record of £120 million sound? That's what Liverpool are willing to offer should the striker decide to leave Newcastle and go to Merseyside. Well, the Magpies have expressed they don't want to get rid of the Swede, even in their bid for striker Hugo Ekitike. Former Newcastle winger Nobby Solano shared his thoughts on the matter.
The fans love it when you're always loyal to the team, loyal to the club. It's very tentative for Isak, you know. He's in great position. It's very tentative for the club, how much money they offer to him. But I think Eddie will be the guy. I mean, the manager won't let him to happen this situation.
Elsewhere, Brentford could be chasing Ipswich Omari Hutchinson as a potential Brian Mbeumo replacement. We also understand Ethan Nwaneri set to sign a fresh 4-year contract with Arsenal. For all the latest transfer news, head to our live blog at talksport.com. Bournemouth are preparing to make the Premier League's smallest stadium to the Premier League's second smallest stadium. The club wants to almost double the capacity of the Vitality to 20,200. They're hoping to complete the works by August 2027. Now, after Scotty Scheffler said this ahead of the Open this week.
I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point.
Golfing legend Dame Laura Davies is baffled by the comments from the world number one and told talkSPORT he must be bored of winning.
That's what you go for, you know, those moments. And yeah, they're fleeting, but most players on tour don't get the luxury of winning that many times in a short span of time that Scotty's won. And if I was his fellow pros, I'd be thinking, wow, you are making it look easy, but it's not as easy and it shouldn't be boring.
Well, despite Scheffler's comments, he has expressed his determination to win the major. Scheffler, Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm are considered the 3 favourites to win the Claret Jug. The Open at Port Rush gets underway tomorrow, and talkSPORT 2 will keep you covered.
Yeah, just one pesky hour to go here on Kelly and Jordan here on talkSPORT today. We'll be back together. The old band is back together tomorrow as well at Wembley Stadium, where we'll be there for the press conference and all the hoopla surrounding Dubois. I'm going with him first this time against the great Alexander Usyk 2. All of that's coming up in the next 45 minutes as well. We're going to preview the fight because this Saturday, the undisputed heavyweight title is on the line as Usyk takes on Dubois. So let's get a look ahead to the fight now with DAZN.
Big fight preview on talkSPORT with DAZN. Watch Usyk versus Dubois on the 19th of July. Live only on DAZN. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
Yeah, to help us look forward to that and talk about all the other issues in boxing, because I know how popular it is on this show.
It is,
And Simon, I'll let you take the lead here because you know even more about it than I do. But we're joined by somebody who knows even more about it than that. Paul Smith, of course, a great boxer himself
voice,
these days, a trainer and commentator. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Lovely to meet you, but first and foremost.
Thank you.
We're human beings, of course. We're not just talking machines, so it's lovely to meet you as well. Deep breath.
Yeah.
How excited are you about the possibility of Usyk and Dubois doing it again at Wembley?
I thought it was a decent fight the first time. I feel, obviously, Alexander Usyk is an unbelievable fighter. And take the patriotism aside.
Sure.
I've been a massive fan of his since he very first started. My brother Callum was in the same Super 6 tournament as them at the same time, the World Boxing Series.
Oh, yeah.
And Alexander Usyk won the cruiserweights and my brother won the super middleweights. Both of them world champions in it. They bumped into each other in the lift. We've always been massive fans. He's fought against Scousers, British fighters, and it's hard to sort of go against them people, but it's hard not to admire and respect someone of his ability and his whole attitude and his whole demeanour. We love Alexander Usyk, but it's a good fight because Dubois is improving. He has improved. The win against Joshua, I was really impressed with, and I give him a lot of credit for that.
Well, clearly people are interested in, if the first fight had been no good, you wouldn't be able to fill Wembley Stadium for it, although, boxing seems to be able to fill any stadium.
But I think
it's
more to do with the ascent of Daniel Dubois. Ultimately the sort of destruction of Anthony Joshua. Did you see that? Did we talk about that, Paul? Did you see that coming with Joshua? Because I felt that Joshua, in the 4 fights that led up to the fight against Daniel Dubois, was all being billed as a rehabilitation, and I always thought if he gets a live one, he might have a challenge. But did you see Dubois destroying Joshua in the way that he did?
Not in the way that he did, but you were saying it in the build-up. Yeah. I remember it. I always feel that Anthony Joshua has vulnerabilities, and technically he has to be spot on the night, and he has to maybe go back to the drawing board and go back to the boxing, which won him an Olympic gold medal, especially against someone like Dubois. I've said that, I've made no secret of it. I said I felt, and I've spoken with Ben Davison, the trainer, since on social media, I felt the tactics were wrong on the night.
Yeah, I spoke to Ben about it as well, and he wanted to clarify those things because the idea that what was said had been characterised in a certain way, and what had been analysed by Shane McGuigan in the commentary, he'd put a different spin on it and said that it wasn't quite what was being said. But the ascent of Dubois, obviously I saw Daniel fight years ago when he was being billed as this hot prospect. I remember Jeff Powell writing an article in the Mail about this, forget Tyson Fury, forget Anthony Joshua, Triple D's the guy. Then he gets beat by Joe Joyce, comes back, beats Kevin Lorena, then goes into a very set of fights and obviously loses to Usyk. But this building of Jarrell Miller, Hrgovic was the impressive fight that I think everyone suddenly went, wow, hang on a second, not only can you take some punishment, you can get through it.
Is decent.
You grit it down and put your gum shield. Yeah. I mean, how better do you look at Dubois now from the fighter that went in against Fury, that I think missed an opportunity potentially because he didn't jump on, not Fury, against Usyk, he didn't jump on Usyk because of the time delay that the referee allowed. Yeah. How better a fighter do you think Dubois is now?
I think he is a better fighter. I think he's doing, obviously, he's more looser and he's letting the shots go better. There's a lad, Kieran, in a gym helping him out, who's a good fighter himself. Kieran Farrell years ago had to stop, unfortunately, early. He's added a lot of fluidity to Dubois' game, so he's not big and stiff and upright too much. But obviously, since the Joe Joyce fight, massive improvement since the Joe Joyce fight. It was the ending of the Joe Joyce fight which raised a lot of questions for Daniel Dubois which were asked again in the Usyk fight, and it ended in the same manner.
Sorry, just to clear it up, because it keeps coming up. You were talking about the delay there. Actually, he was referring, of course, to the low blow that was given as a low. How did you see it, Paul?
100% low blow according to the rules of boxing. When you walk to the centre of the ring, the referee will point out the line is the navel line, is the belt line. That's what they say. People are online arguing, saying it's a short.
The belt is 4-6 inches deep in some boxing shorts.
I totally agree and understand, and sometimes that will cover the belly button, so the referee will say there is good, you can hit there. Usyk's short, you can see his belly button. Both when the fighters are together, when he's boxing later on, he's a southpaw, you can see the actual nail, the belly button. So anything therefore on the belt line, touching anywhere on his short is a foul.
Did you see that as a foul?
I didn't. I felt it was a legitimate shot. I'm going to obviously bow to greater knowledge of a fighter. Derek Chisora,
unbelievable fighter. Carl Frampton thinks it was a clean shot.
He did.
I totally respect it.
Derek Chisora said on Monday that he felt it was a low blow. The question for me wasn't necessarily. I still think that irrespective of a low blow, if Usyk was made to get up, right, and the referee had said get up, right, he'd still found a way to navigate himself around. So a lot of currency is being made about this low blow and how much damage he did to Usyk and how Usyk was allowed to get out of jail. I think Usyk would have made himself scarce around the ring.
That's his number one skill. He solves problems in the ring, doesn't he?
Sure, he creates problems.
Russ Amber tells me a story. He wraps Usyk's hand and he's in camp with him. He tells me a story about Usyk. He said, this guy puts his head underwater and has arms and rests on the water for 3 minutes. And then he has 1 minute rest and he does it for 12 rounds. He said, you're trying to get into this man's head and beat him mentally. Mentally, he's one of the strongest people you will ever meet, and that is a big factor in this fight, as well as the ability. The ability levels are scary. But back to the low blow, what we were talking about. I keep seeing people on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, and they're saying it wasn't actually in the privates. You get caught anywhere in your bladder or your groin, it's called a groin guard. It's not called a protector.
But the reasons why it's running again is because Don Charles's son have made it a big thing. They're trying to get into Usyk's head. They're trying to get Usyk at it a little bit because nothing ever seems to worry him. Nothing ever seems to get him at it. But he has had a few nibbles at it, hasn't he? He's had a few reactions to it. Do you see this as something that's going to aggravate, antagonise, and perhaps take him off his game? I don't. But
I don't think so. Let's have respect on Charles massively. He's a lovely fella. He's a really nice man. He's been around the game for a long time as well. I think his son getting involved with that is probably not Don's style as such, but by all means, let it happen, because anything that you can do to try and get into Usyk's head. Listen, as I've heard stories in the past, he's standing on the front line with a machine gun and he's got Fury standing on the ring shouting at him as if he's going to intimidate. There's probably not a person in boxing that would intimidate Usyk, but size-wise, stature-wise, strength, power, fitness, it all lies with Dubois at the moment in this fight, and that's what makes the fight interesting.
Of course, and we know that Usyk has been, in my experience, the most remarkable champion. There've been all kinds of brilliant people, but since Muhammad Ali, in some ways, you just look at him and you think, how can you be? But of course, time catches up eventually, whatever. Otherwise, people would still be boxing in their 60s, wouldn't they? Yeah. It's very, very interesting. I want you to know, Paul, just what a brilliant boxing expert you're dealing now with me, because of course, if Dubois wins, he'll become the first Briton to hold all the titles, undisputed titles, since Lennox Lewis. Many years ago, I had a show on BBC with John Inverdale, and Lennox Lewis had just won the Olympic title. In he comes to the studio to talk about turning professional. We had a lovely 15-20 minutes with Lennox Lewis. Yes, you're great. You won the. At
that point, he was Canadian.
We knew he was going to do, and all the rest. You're great. Blah blah blah. You'll probably be world champion. He left the studio. We both went, nah, too small. We made our minds up. Sorry, nah,
and
too small.
He was considered a big fella for the heavyweights of that generation as well, wasn't he? He was big, obviously.
Great boxer.
Compared to nowadays, not so much, but he was.
I think I'm going to be a good omen, because I went to the two fights. The ridiculous, obscene draw that was given at Madison Square Garden with Evander Holyfield, and the second fight, which was held in Los Angeles, which Lennox, I think, lost to Evander Holyfield, but they gave him the nod, and that's where he became the 3-belt champion. When you look at Usyk, the orthodoxy will tell us, Danny, and I think Paul will go with this as well, that there's nothing to suggest that there's any answer to this question besides Usyk, because Usyk's beaten Fury, he's beaten Joshua, he's beaten everybody.
But our minds are trained to think about him as unbeatable now.
But the question is now, is there anything to indicate that the 2 wars that he had with Fury, in the same way that Deontay Wilder had a trilogy with Fury, and then we saw him come back, and this is not Deontay Wilder anymore, this is not the same fighter. Is there any indication in your mind that could lend itself to the case that Usyk is going to be the victim of Father Time and ultimately is going to catch up with him?
For me,
in
no.
this fight.
For me, no, and no disrespect to Tyson Fury at all, but I felt he was okay in them fights. Usyk.
Right.
I felt it wasn't like when Fury was beating Wilder. That took a lot out of Wilder, the way Fury beat him, and those fights were really, really tough fights. I just think I think age hasn't and probably won't catch up with Usyk at the moment. But listen, I've been wrong a million times. We'll be wrong again, and this is what makes boxing, especially heavyweight boxing. You get it on that chin, you go in, and that I feel is. I think Dubois has one chance of winning the fight, and it will be by knockout. I don't think he's going to outbox him for 12 rounds. I think Usyk has several ways that he can win the fight, and he's already stopped him. He's already knocked him out. He's already beat him in a huge fight, albeit not this version of Daniel Dubois, who has improved.
Listen, I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hear from both fighters, however briefly. We hope to talk to them tomorrow in greater depth. We'll continue to analyse what might happen on Saturday night, including I want to talk to you about getting boxers to deal with the occasion, because even if you're Alexander Usyk, these huge stadiums and all the rest of it, it is very different from when you're an amateur fighting in front of 5 people. We'll talk more with Paul Smith very, very soon here on talkSPORT.
Big fight preview on talkSPORT with DAZN. Watch Usyk versus Dubois on the 19th of July, live only on DAZN. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
You're listening to me, Danny Kelly, and Simon Jordan. As I say, not just my old friend, but my old broadcasting spar. Thing is, Paul Smith, that since we got split up, he started to win a load of awards. Make of that what you want. We're lucky, though, that even to Simon's incredible knowledge of boxing, we're adding that of Paul Smith. And I'm looking forward still to Saturday night's tear-up between Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. Let's hear from the two fighters, albeit very brief. We'll hope to hear from them in person and much a greater length when we get to Wembley Stadium tomorrow for the press conferences. Here is Gareth A. Davis talking to Daniel Dubois, looking to be a savage and perhaps achieve destiny.
Just be a savage in there, and we'll talk about it after it's done. But just be a savage, bring chaos.
Do you think you have got under his skin, or you're going to get under his skin?
I'm going to get under his skin with these punches, with these bombs I'm going to be throwing. So, yeah.
There's an energy about you that you're really ready.
Yeah. No, I have been. I've been ready for months now. It's been a long camp, this one. From the last fight that didn't happen, it's been ongoing. So I'm ready to go in there now.
Destiny.
For sure.
When you look at that arch from the farm, just behind us, that big Wembley arch.
Yeah. And all my men will say it's destiny.
Look, I wouldn't get into a boxing ring for love nor the kind of money that they pull down. They're not like interviewing other sportsmen. They have to say positive things because otherwise your mind wouldn't allow you to go through those ropes. Let's hear from the champion, Alexander Usyk, also talking to Gareth. And he says he's prepared for the full length of the fight.
I prepare every time on 12th round because we with my coach, with my team, we prepare 12th round. But if I have chance, I do it.
Do you believe you will stop him?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, yes, of course. I was watching.
I think I'm going to get bashed up.
No, I'd definitely lose. Don't worry about that. I was watching the cricket the other day, a brilliant test match at Lord's, and I was almost surprised to hear Stuart Broad, the legendary England bowler who's only just retired, saying that the crowd, because the crowd were really into the match as it happened, the crowd, you don't hear them when you're playing. He's saying that you lock them out because you've got to do your bowling or your batting. I was surprised because that 35,000 people making a noise where you're trying to do something is an interesting thing to try and lock out. I'm asking this. I'm talking about this, Paul, because boxers, I don't know how will the trainers go about, particularly with Dubois. There'll be, goodness, how many people are going to be? What's this? 90,000 people. Now that is an occasion in your life, whether you like to admit it or not. How will they go about making sure that he is focused on that, 25 square meters, whatever it is?
It's strange when you're in there. It's a cacophony of noise, but you only hear specific voices. It's the strangest thing going on. It's just, but maybe that's just from when you're a kid and when you start boxing, you listen to your coach. But it just becomes a bit of a blur, and you hear the odd little thing now and then. And sometimes you wish you didn't, because sometimes you hear the wrong voices. You'll hear someone shouting nonsense, and you'll listen to it, and it creeps in. And you've got to just stay focused on what you're doing. But they will have a game plan. They'll have plan A. They'll have plan B. They should have plan A, plan B, possibly even plan C. Usyk will come out. He'll try and take the centre of the ring. If Dubois comes head on, he may try and elect for the back foot and try and move and try and tire Dubois out, which is what I felt AJ maybe should have done. But it all changes when a decent shot lands, as you know.
Going to the crowd, I mean, you fought Arthur Abraham in Germany, didn't you? And so he knows what he's talking about in terms of environments are concerned. But you look at Daniel Dubois walking into the first fight, and I keep making this point. Anthony Joshua was there to be crowned. 96,000 people were in that environment to see Anthony Joshua being crowned. Daniel Dubois wasn't fazed in the slightest by that. In fact, it probably inspired him. Interestingly, Derek Chisora talked the other day about his fight with Usyk. And Chisora was being used as a blueprint. People say that the way that Chisora fought Usyk gave him his hardest fight. Even Usyk himself said it's the hardest fight I've had. He's a Brit basher, and ultimately Chisora was the hardest one. Chisora was saying to me, I fought him during COVID. If I hadn't have fought him during COVID, I'd have had a crowd, and if I'd have had a crowd, I'd have won.
Wow.
And that was his perspective. But I don't think the crowd's going to be predominantly Daniel Dubois, but it's also going to be a large Ukrainian contingent because he is revered and he is respected and he is admired
for very good reasons.
And so I think you'll find that neither one of them are going to be fazed by the event, are they?
It's another thing in Dubois' favour. I was at the first fight in Roslav in Poland. I managed Ziad Almouth, the Saudi fighter. He was on the undercard, and I watched it, and you couldn't believe how many Ukrainians were there, obviously because it's very near to
Well, let me ask you a different question
Ukraine.
about the crowd. The officials and the referee, how much are they affected by? Because there was an argument to suggest that the nature of what the referee allowed Usyk to do, ignore the fact that we disagree on the principle of low blow, but the referee and the crowd and the partisan nature of the crowd that was in support of Usyk in that fight, do you believe that plays a part? Because we've seen the Josh Taylor, Jack Catchell situation a while ago in Scotland. Do you think it plays a part with 90,000 fans or 60,000 fans being pro-Daniel?
I've said this for a long time about the crowd with judges and referees, but also the commentary team. I used to commentate for different broadcasts. I'm sitting there and what we're saying, this judge, you can hear it. This judge's card similar to ours.
That's absolutely nuts.
Whether you're influencing him subconsciously or whether he knows it, but biased and he's listening and he's thinking, I agree with that, so that round's going to them. You just never know. But sometimes you need a little bit of extra. Well, I've sat there scoring fights when I've been commentating. I'm thinking, I've got this wrong here. It was Luke Campbell and Mendy, and I had Mendy winning most rounds. I'm thinking, I might be having a howler here. And I text my brother Liam later on, have you got this? And he put, Mendy's winning easy. And I was a bit relieved because you just don't know when you're so judging is very hard to do. So you will and can be influenced by a crowd.
In some fights, it looks
absolutely. And referees certainly can when the crowd start getting on the referee's back, especially like football or the sports you see it. But in boxing for sure.
How do you see, is the only opportunity Daniel has to win this fight is to knock him out? And is that opportunity only going to be available to him early in the fight? And the further it goes into the fight, into the championship rounds or down the stretch, that Usyk takes over, or do you see it differently?
No, I see it like that. I don't think his only chance is early. I think his only chance to win is by knockouts. I cannot see him outboxing Alexander Usyk over 12 rounds unless he gets a couple of knockdowns here or there, and it's a rough night for Alexander Usyk. But with that power, you do carry that late, but also the size of Dubois, we keep saying it as a compliment and as a plus. The size also is a lot of lactic acid will kick in once he's carrying that big frame, and the size of him through this fight. So the power and the speed, more importantly, probably will fade as the fight goes later on. And don't forget, Alexander Usyk will make him work really hard without Dubois realising it. And also there's still the risk, in my opinion, that Dubois could come out and start in third, fourth gear from the start due to a bit of nerves, which is totally understandable. The crowd, the event, the opponent again who's beat you already. It's a big ask.
Simon's probably wondering if I'm ill because I'm speaking so little. But when I'm in the presence of a real expert, I know when to zip it and listen rather than just talk. Normally, Simon, of course, I think I know far more than the person talking, and just keep going. Paul, the questions are leapfrogging one over another. You talk about the occasion. Yeah. Talk to me about the coat for This is a huge commercial event, and so obviously it has to be show business. I get that. Yeah. Talk to me about these ring entries, ring walks, whatever you want to talk them, taking up 4, 5, 6 minutes between the dressing room, which is sacred, and the ring, which is a separate experience. Do coaches like this whole thing of having to have the fighter walk in? Does the fighters enjoy it?
Me as a fighter, I hated it. My brother Liam loves it, but me as a fighter, I love ring entrances. I think it's great. I think that's the little bit of entertainment or razzmatazz what you get. I had my music picked up before I even had my first pro fight. I listen to songs. I think I'd love to have a ring walk to that because the hairs on my arms stand up when I listen to it still. Or songs that motivate you.
I wish we'd known that. We'd have had it on for you as you came into the studio.
How challenging is it, Paul, being the fighter waiting?
Absolutely.
So you come out first, and you're sat in the ring and you're waiting.
Stood in the ring, yeah, it's tough. Now, I've seen coaches get the pads out and do a bit of pads. We saw famously, obviously, Steve Collins get the headphones on with his hypnotist in, and it was brilliant what he did because he won and he blocked all that out. But speaking of Chris Eubank, I've never seen entrances like his in my life, and the hairs on your neck stand up, on your arms stand up when you listen to Tina Turner, because it just reminds me of when I was a kid watching that entrance. The ring entrance is great, but also it could break you, and it can make you or break you. Yeah. It's a strange one. You know the fight's happening, you've got 12 weeks to train for it. Every morning when you wake up, your stomach will turn because you know that fight's going to happen. It doesn't make you any less of a fighter. We all have nerves, we all have fear, we all have anxiousness about the fight coming, but you have to deal with it, and the one who deals with it best is usually the one.
Who's in first? Do we know?
It's got to.
Challenger has to be first.
They're both champions.
It's got to be Dubois, I think.
Dubois got the IBF, and he's got the other 3 belts, hasn't he?
Usyk's got all the other 3. He's the number 1. It's Usyk, Dubois, he's the A side, so I imagine. Listen, they could have a coin toss. They saw it the other night with Katie Taylor.
Dubois walked into Wembley with Anthony Joshua, and you saw the difference in the ring entrance, and lots been discussed about Joshua's entrance. And Joshua was considered to be out of sorts because he arrived late at the event. But when we walked in, he looked like a man walking to the gallows, which is surprising to all of us. Whereas Dubois was punching the gloves and ready to go. And I think he'll be the same. Yeah. I think it'll be precisely the same. Do you see it this way, Paul? That in order for Daniel Dubois to win, because I'm picking Dubois to win, and I often pick with my heart what I want to happen rather than my head. Right? But I still think he's got a significant chance. Do you think it's a version of the situation where Usyk's got to be 3 or 4% off and Dubois is his best night? Is that how you see it, as being an outcome in favour of Dubois? Probably, but it's heavyweight boxing and it can happen. They could come together to try. Usyk could try and throw a shot early on and Dubois land one first and knocks him out or catches him and stump. I said Sunday morning I think Usyk will win and win relatively well, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dubois knocks him out because he hits so hard.
We got so much more to talk about, both this and your brothers and stuff. Please stay with us for another 15 minutes. Of course, there's live commentary. I'll give you all the details about that here on talkSPORT of the big fight. Meanwhile, you're listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go.
Alexander Isak, how does a British transfer record of £120 million sound? That's what Liverpool are willing to offer should the striker decide to leave Newcastle and go to Merseyside. Well, the Magpies have expressed they don't want to get rid of the Swede. Former Newcastle winger Nobby Solano shared his thoughts on the matter.
He's in great position. It's very tentative for the club how much money they offer to him. But I think Eddie will be the guy. I mean, the manager won't let him to happen this situation.
For all the latest transfer news, head to our live blog at talksport.com. Bournemouth are preparing to make the Premier League's smallest stadium to the Premier League's second smallest stadium. The club wants to almost double the capacity of the Vitality to 20,200. They're hoping to complete the works by August 2027. Now, after Scotty Scheffler said this ahead of the Open this week.
I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
Golfing legend Dame Laura Davies is baffled by the comments from the world number one and told talkSPORT he must be bored of winning.
That's what you go for, you know, those moments. And yeah, they're fleeting, but most players on tour don't get the luxury of winning that many times in a short span of time that Scotty's won.
The Open at Port Rush gets underway tomorrow, and talkSPORT 2 will keep you covered.
Yeah, welcome back to me, Danny Kelly, Simon Jordan, and we have managed to extend the highly expensive presence, if those are the right words, of Mr. Smith. I'm delighted to have him here in the studio. Paul, we could talk about the big fight on Saturday, Fred, but there's so much else going on, including your brother, Callum. The big fight against David Benavidez was all due to happen. Now it's moved on. What's happened there?
Benavidez they couldn't get the offer over the line. He got an offer from the American promoters to fight him over in the States as a challenger for Benavidez's title, and they couldn't get to the right amount for the fight, what the fight was worth. And then Anthony Yarde's been offered the fight from the obviously Riyadh season, and that fight's happening now, which I think it's a good fight. But Callum's going to be fighting probably October in Liverpool or in the UK, I think, and then he obviously has the WBO interim title. So once the main two, Beterbiev and Bivol fight, then we'll know
the belts
what
get
happens with
fragmented.
that. Then,
I mean, because obviously when I spoke to Callum a while ago, and he talked about whether he was going to continue after the Beterbiev fight, and he only wanted meaningful fights, and obviously came back and did a fabulous job against Josh Boazzi. I was surprised to see that the Benavidez Yarde fight was made. When you look at that fight, I mean, how do you see it? I mean, Benavidez, to me, it was avoided by Canelo. But the question is whether he carries the power up from super middles up to light heavy. What's your take on that?
Good fighter. He's a very good fighter. He's a typical Mexican style fighter. Loves going to the body. He's exciting. He's obviously done what he's done in boxing. And I think with the Yarde fight, we have to look at the losses that he's had and how they panned out. And they both panned out very similar in the fact that it was a very good effort. But he blew out after 6, 7, 8 rounds, and then was stopped in both of the fights that he's had against Kovalev and Beterbiev. Yeah. Good efforts, as I said, and it's difficult to say it because obviously I've had a couple of back and forth words with his manager, but I respect Anthony Yarde. I like him. I've always been respectful when I've seen him. I've always shook his hand, vice versa. He always seems a nice lad. He's a good fighter as
he's
well.
A good fighter.
He's a good fighter, and he's a live fighter in this fight. But obviously,
he hasn't been great. I mean, he was better against Lyndon Arthur. But he wasn't compelling against Lyndon Arthur. In the second fight, obviously, with Lyndon Arthur, he blew him out. Right, lost the first fight during COVID, knocked Lyndon Arthur into the next life in the second fight. The third fight, which I didn't see the need for, but it was there, was a decent fight. But would you pick Yarde to win this against Benavidez? Because I'm not sure I would.
I wouldn't know, but as I said, never say never. He has a chance. He's a big lad. He's a big light heavyweight. Obviously, the rumours and what we've seen, he's obviously a puncher. He can punch. It's whether he puts them shots together, lands enough shots at the right time against Benavidez. But the problem for me will always be that engine. He has to build that engine. He has to have that.
Is this his best shot? I mean, when you're fighting, the fights that he's had, Kovalev, he had a chance against Kovalev and he could have won that fight, couldn't he? But Beterbiev, is this the best chance for Yarde for a world title
against them with the two names? Yeah, absolutely. I think you'd have to say that. But obviously, it's a little bit later on in Anthony Yarde's career as well, and he was a bit younger when he fought against Kovalev and Beterbiev. I think his best chance was probably Kovalev. My best chance was my first world title fight. After that, they're aware in the wire see it, and then obviously you start to get old and you start to get a little bit more long in the tooth. But this is a good fight. This is a very exciting fight. It's one that I'll be watching. It's one that I would tune in to watch anyway if it wasn't involving me brother somewhere down the line.
And then your brother is waiting for the outcome and hopefully.
Well, no, he'll fight for the. He's a WBO interim.
Yeah, he's a WBO interim. So that's the next mandatory to be called. The WBC mandatory was called, and Bivol vacated to give Benavidez that.
Have got all the belts
because they're fighting again, obviously, and rightly so. I think they could have 7 fights and they'd all be very much the same, razor thin decisions either side, and two.
So who is the possibility of seeing Callum win within October?
I don't know, but it's going to have to be someone in the top 10 of the governing body to defend that interim title against. I don't know. He's having a look through. Right. He'll speak with his team. Like Callum's got his team. Callum is his own manager. He looks after himself, and the team will decide, and then they'll see which.
Does he want to fight at Anfield? Is that because obviously all you fighters seem to want to fight at the football clubs that you support? Is that?
Now you've got to fight at the new Everton Stadium. Beautiful place to fight. I'm sure.
I'd be delighted to fight there.
The stadium's. I fought at Goodison, and again it was when that show was on. I messaged Eddie say to him, "Look, if you can get me on that, please do, because it's a stadium in our.
I already miss Goodison Park.
And the red side are not bitter, so we don't mind fighting there. Whereas I don't think the Blues will be fighting at Anfield. But if there's a fight at Anfield, I'd be thinking about trying to come back myself to fight someone.
Listen,
because it'd be an opportunity to not turn down.
I hope this is not painful, but on the undercard of Ben against Eubank, it was real big. I live in the Republic of Ireland. It was real big when Aaron McKenna beat your brother Liam. Obviously it would be. But we can be very, very chauvinistic about boxers in Ireland. Where does that leave Liam? Do you think we'll see more of him?
I don't know. I don't think so. But he's had a few interviews recently. We were over in Istanbul. He'd done a few interviews and he answered a few questions, saying that probably that's the end for him. But you never know what might get offered. And by the offer, I think he's probably thinking that something might get offered where he's definitely going to win it. He can bow gracefully on a win rather than going out the way he did in Wembley, which he won't be happy with. That won't sit right with him for a long time. But unfortunately, that's the game. That's the game we're all in. And Father Time beats us all, and I think it might have caught up with him a little bit. The injuries didn't do him any help either for the last 2 years of his career, let's say, after the first Eubank win, which he was very good in, from then in the back, and then the inactivity. And inactivity kills also, but inactivity at the very end of your career when you're aging as well is rootless for a fighter. That's going to be the final nail in the coffin for you.
What about Aaron McKenna himself?
Good fighter.
Yeah,
he's a good fighter. I've spoke with them plenty in the past. I've had them in the Rotunda training them a little bit. We come over for a little week and stayed over in Liverpool for a week a few years ago. They're good lads. The dad's looking after them. The dad's training them well, and he's an exciting talent going forward. I felt obviously going into the fight, if Liam hadn't left, he would beat Aaron McKenna. That was my opinion. It still is, but Aaron McKenna had done really well on the night. He did what he had to do. He beat Liam. That was in front of him, and onwards to bigger and better things for him.
Yeah, well, that was going to say it was an undercard of Ben against Eubank. Now during the break, and I don't want to give away too many secrets, we were saying, "Oh God, Manny Pacquiao, give us a break." And Ricky Hatton, heartbreaking to see Ricky back in training for me, because I just remember seeing his fights and in person in some cases. I was working with the BBC at the time. See that power of force of nature can't be the same. But Ben and Eubank was such a good fight. Are you happy for them to be rematching?
I said to you, didn't I think we were talking? Simon asked me about it, and I said I'd see it again. I thought it was a good fight, and that's what you're always going to get. If you get two fighters who are pretty evenly matched, you're going to get a good fight. It doesn't really matter what the level is. The level of the event, the magnitude of the event, is because obviously what the fathers did in the sport, and the fact that the public still sort of love, like myself, a little bit of nostalgia, and we all bought into it, and it filled Spurs ground, it filled the stadium out, and it was an unbelievable atmosphere on the night. So I would like to see that again. I think it would be pretty much the same result, but obviously it was a very entertaining fight, and you just never know what might happen, because I didn't think Eubank could be hurt by Ben, but he was caught a couple of times, and maybe, as you say, Father Time has a little say in that. So it makes the fight interesting.
It's your fault. You're so good at this stuff. I've got about 1,000 questions I've got to ask you here, because I think we're supposed to leave some of them out. We had Frank Warren on the show yesterday, or you did. Yeah. What about Hamza Shiraz? What do you think about the way that? Where's he going now?
He's an unbelievable fighter. He's really good, and I thought he was very, very good in his fight last weekend. Showing good improvements with Andy Lee. You can see a little bit of the style keeping in what Andy Lee trains, teaches, and he's passing on obviously all the Kronk stuff from the great Emmanuel Stewart. I think it was a really good win for him against a good fighter who has a very good reputation, Belanga. I've never really been or seen the the stuff that a lot of other people do with Belanga. I think he's been a little bit overrated in his time, but he's certainly a live fighter, and Hamza Shiraz did really well to get him out of there in the style and the fashion that he did.
I heard you two talking as well. There's some talk about Hamza taking on the winner of Canelo.
Yeah, that's what Frank was saying. I mean, he's in the right weight class now, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a leap, though, is it?
Well, not. Yeah, I mean, the argument that Canelo is in decline will be seen perhaps in the fight against Crawford. We saw him against William Skell. William Skell didn't come to fight, did he? So he made it more difficult than perhaps it needed to be.
That's what I was going to say. Then he's got a better chance than William Skell, hasn't he? That's how you have to look at it.
But I think now that Hamza's landed in super middleweight, because I was disappointed with Hamza against Carlos Adames. I expected him to win that fight, and I know that the broken hand became an excuse. But up until the point where he broke his hand, he still wasn't at that level that we expected him to be.
I think the weight might have been him as well. I think the weight will have been him. He's a big lad. He's got a huge frame. Yeah. He's certainly big enough to go up to light heavyweight. You know, and one of them. My brother Callum used to always get told out of super middle, you'll end up light heavy. I think we could see Hamza up there with his frame.
I'm laughing because it's like it's 2000 and where are we now? 25. It's like 2015 with Canelo fighting Terence Crawford. You disagree about who's going to win that between the two veterans? Is that right?
I have myself and Spencer have gone down the pathway of thinking that Crawford...
he's bringing in Spencer now.
Well, because I think I need some currency from guys actually being in a ring. Arguing against someone's been in a ring is a fool's errand, isn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I've got some currency in the fact that Spencer Oliver agrees with me, although Spencer and I pick very few winners. I just feel that Crawford has got the ability to be able to navigate his way around Canelo, but Paul will say Canelo's big in the ring, big at the size. It's a big ask.
But you're right in what you're saying, and I do think Canelo with the size, but it's only the size that will come into factor, I think, because ability-wise, they're both on exactly the same level. Crawford's unbelievable, and he's one of the best to do it. He's one of the best of this generation, as he's proven so by being undisputed champion twice, and this possibly could be a third. And I think just the fact that he's jumping up to that weight, I think that will go against him. But again, as I said, I've been wrong plenty of times, and it's a very close fight.
Because we saw Canelo, talking about going up to the heavyweights and then getting stopped in his tracks at light heavy by Bivol.
Yeah. And it as Father Time kicked in with Canelo, that's what we'll find out in September.
Paul, it's been an absolute joy, an absolute treat
to
have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing us your expertise and personality, and for not mentioning Liverpool Football Club too many times, because I can see you're still floating on air about that. Let me remind you that it is this Saturday. talkSPORT brings you live commentary of the undisputed world heavyweight title fight between Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois from Wembley Stadium. British heavyweight Dave Allen will be part of our expert boxing team. Keep you up to date with all of the action from the start of fight week right through to the final bell. That's Usyk versus Dubois this Saturday live on talkSPORT and the talkSPORT Boxing YouTube channel. And tomorrow, Simon and I will be, between 10 in the morning and 1 o'clock over at Wembley for more of the build-up, the press conference. We'll be hoping to speak in depth to both boxers. In the meanwhile, thanks to Paul Smith for joining us here on talkSPORT.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't forget, how could you, that you're listening to Kelly and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Now, Simon, the running order I've been given for the show contains a very, very important subject matters here, including the drug rules in tennis, including the meaning of Manchester City's new kit. But I think I'm going to, let me just...
£1 billion deal on it. 10 years at 100 million quid.
Lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me just get... There goes the running order. Because I
normally do that and then use it to wipe something with.
I haven't seen you, and the listeners will forgive a moment of self-indulgence. Wasn't Paul great?
He was brilliant, Paul. Yeah.
Because I haven't seen you in the person. So we've swapped texts on the night.
Yeah.
But then they're already starting to fade into the mist of memory. But it was an amazing few weeks when the club that you used to own that had never won a major trophy won a trophy. Yeah. Then the club that I support so, to use an overused word, passionately, as you know, emotionally I support Spurs, broke their 17-year duck. An amazing time for us both. Tell us about it. I know you've probably talked to him about it a lot, but I'd love to hear again your own emotions.
I thought they were going to win. And I watched predominantly the second half. And I didn't feel at any point the City were going to score, irrespective of how much dominance they had of the ball and how much they are Manchester City. This was not the Manchester City of before. I think some of the players that need to ask certain questions of themselves. But the fact of the matter is, I was delighted for the fans. I think that it's a fabulous club. It's a club that I obviously grew up supporting, put a lot of money into. The end wasn't what I wanted it to be, but notwithstanding that, the platform that other...
But you still support them like you did when you were a kid?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, of course I do. I mean, I find the nature of the personalities that are there for very, very good reason are people that I don't want to mix with. And so being in part of... I would never just turn up at the FA Cup final. I haven't been back to Palace since I've left.
No.
I will do because it means a lot to me and I want to take my young son there. So that's a monkey I've got off my own
And
back.
it's a great ground to watch football in.
And it's a great ground to watch football in. It's a great support base. And, they've been, third time lucky. 2016 FA Cup final. They should have won the FA Cup in 1990 against Manchester United.
Gary Bailey. Was it Gary Bailey? I can't remember.
No, it was a Scottish goalkeeper in goal, wasn't it?
Yes, Jim Leighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Ian Wright came on and made the difference. We went 3-2 up and got ourselves and United get back in the game and then win the sort of dour replay on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
2016 they go in front again against Man United and lose. With Rooney scoring, and I think the other kid that was transferred to Nottingham Forest scored as well, didn't he? Lingard.
Yeah.
And now you've got this opportunity, and I think Palace as a football club, they won. What did they win? They won the Zenith Data Systems Cup in 19, whenever it was, against Everton. I remember going to watch that, Paul Rideout playing for Everton. But this is a big cup.
Yeah.
And then, of course, watching your lot, I'm very friendly with Daniel. I like Daniel, irrespective of the challenges we had in the background years ago with Tottenham and Bostock and Andy Johnson and Wayne Routledge and whatever else. I like him. I respect a lot of the things he does. I don't agree with everything he does, but I respect the way he runs Spurs. We might disagree on that. And I was delighted to see Tottenham winning.
We don't disagree in one level. Obviously, I do the Buton Lane podcast, which does great business, and don't take the listeners for granted ever. And a lot of them are very, very anti-ENIC. My argument with that is I'd need to know who was going to replace them, what kind of owners you might get, because there's some we've seen with some of the clubs that got in trouble, some terrible look, people with deep pockets and very thin knowledge of football are very keen to get involved now. That's my
But I think,
my fear.
Hasn't it moved on a bit, Dan? Look at now, Tottenham can't be bought for anything less than, I suspect, than 3.5, 4 billion.
Sure.
I think Daniel's
less that huge debt they're carrying.
Sure. But the debt's for legitimate debt. It's on a stadium.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not on player trading.
And the stadium is doing great business.
And he's enabled it, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a spaceship. Daniel's built a spaceship. It may need a different captain. And the reason why it may need a different captain is because Daniel doesn't have the wealth. Daniel's wealth is tied up in Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah.
Joe Lewis has no interest, and the Lewis family have no interest in putting any more money in. So to get it to the next level, it needs a change of ownership. And the only way you're going to get a change of ownership is someone like Todd Bowley comes out of the ether and buys it, or a nation state does.
Yeah.
Now,
and both to me have issues.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
But this is the nature of the beast now.
Yeah, of course. I agree with that. And it's for me, there were two things on the night in Bilbao. I genuinely was unbelievably happy for the young Spurs fans who, just as I presume, committed to the project as the supporters of Manchester City or Liverpool or Arsenal or whoever, who needed some justification, for the kind of money they're asked to pay for tickets and all the rest of it. And also, this is very sad, but it's true. I thought about the people who I know who've supported Spurs for decades, who didn't last long enough to see it. People younger than me, actually. One particular man, I'm sure his family won't mind me, a man called John Sullivan, who died a couple of months before the final. I thought about people like that. But Spurs fans won't like me to say this, but Daniel Levy gets all the grief and all the rest of it. But that 17-year gap is one of the great aberrations in European football.
Yeah.
Simon, we did the research for, I think The Athletic did it, and then we followed it up on Trans-Europe Express. No club in any European league had accrued as many league points as Tottenham over that 17 years without winning a trophy.
Yeah.
They've had several good teams, one brilliant team that got to the Champions League final. They just haven't pushed it across the line.
Where were you on the Postecoglou argument? Not about whether he should stay or we should go, but the currency. He talked about Spurs culture when Spurs fans were celebrating potentially losing a game against Man City so that Arsenal couldn't win the league, and Postecoglou were being very unhappy with that. Was he right in that situation where you've got to move the dial and stop worrying about what Arsenal do and start worrying about what you're doing?
He was right from a professional point of view, but he would have been better advised to have kept his views to himself, because you cannot. When you're the manager, you're a curator of something. The fans are there permanently, and whether or not he understood it, and of course he's been in Glasgow, so he should understand it. He was running against the current of Spurs supporters. Now, I personally don't want Spurs to lose any game, but it is perfectly legitimate for Spurs fans to say we can afford to lose one game against Manchester City if it keeps Arsenal out of their tanks off of our lawn. And he might have been very well advised to say nothing rather than to push back against the fans. As regards getting him having to go, look, the 22 league defeats speaks for themselves. But more importantly, I think the proof that just and I know about the injuries. I totally understand it. It isn't one of the jobs of coaches to deal with circumstance. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, at the level, and this is no disrespect to Scotland or to Australia or to international football in the sort of Pacific Rim, chaos alone isn't enough in the Premier League. And I'll tell you for why. Because the Premier League made one great leap forward when it started to bring in the great players from around the world, but its real great leap forward is bringing all the great coaches in from around the world. Yeah. That has been the thing that has cemented the power of the Premier League, and those great coaches will not tolerate a team bringing chaos to the table for more than a few weeks, and so it turned out. I love him for winning that trophy in Bilbao. They can build a statue. Spurs don't do statues, but they can build a statue to him if they want. But it was also right that he had to go.
I agree.
I mean, I can't put it more plainly than that.
Absolutely.
And no doubt when I do the live event in London in a couple of months' time, I get plenty of pelters from the audience. But if I might quote from Sam Spade in the Maltese Falcon when she said, "We'll be in terrible trouble. A certain amount of trouble I can deal with. Otherwise, I couldn't do this for a living." Simon, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you very, very much indeed for the last 3 hours. I'm looking forward to working with you at Wembley Stadium tomorrow. You don't normally go that far off your beats. I'm taking that as a compliment.
Indeed.
It should be a belting show, though. If all these,
it will be.
We've been promised a lot of boxing experts. We'll also keep you up to date about the football and all the rest of it. Coming up next, a show that I sometimes occasionally drag the level down of, the mighty Hawksby and Jacobs, here on talkSPORT. See you tomorrow.